regarding the proposed adoption of a local law amending Chapter 86 of the New Paltz Village Code entitled "A Local Law Repealing Village Code Sections 86-29, 86-30, and 86-31 relating to fire limit districts and sprinkler system requirements, because said code sections have been rendered obsolete by the amendments to the codes, rules, and regulations of the state of New York."
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak to this local law? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say a few things about this. Real quickly, you know, our government, we have a great governmental system, has 3 branches of government. You're the executive, you're sitting here with the legislature, so it's kind of 2 against 1. And I think
That's how I like it, Bob.
I don't. But you guys shouldn't really, because you know you're really here doing the people's business. You really represent the people, and you don't protect the people when you punish them. You don't do that. So one of the things is that this law overall seeks to usurp a lot of judicial jurisdiction. For instance, it says here if a property lacks a smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide detector, it is not to be rented anymore.
Bob, we're not doing the housing standard. We're having a hearing on getting rid of our obsolete fire inspection thing and allowing the state intervention of the fire law.
We're not talking about this local law.
Not yet.
amending chapter
That's
Not
later
yet.
on the agenda. Yeah.
Oh.
This local law is what we discovered is that the rules in the village code governing sprinkler systems and other fire related issues had been updated at the state level and were much more clear and much better for us at the state level. So basically the state kind of got ahead of us and we hadn't caught up yet. So what we're doing is we're repealing the village code that deals with these issues and relying on the state code instead. So that as the state code changes, then our code will then kind of seamlessly keep track. Sure. And no worries, we're going to get to that later on tonight. Yeah. Any other comments on this local law? All right, then I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and I guess I'll open the meeting, the joint meeting with the town. Do we want to go right into it? Actually, do we want to do the Pledge of Allegiance? We probably should. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so we've got 3 items on the joint agenda with the town.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda for the town.
Okay, what's that?
I would like a report on the fire district.
Is there a second to adding that to the agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the town, you guys have a problem?
We're all fine. Can I just ask one quick question
Yeah.
before we get into, can you just tell us what the local law regarding seeker is and what the local law prohibiting formula retail use, just as curiosity?
Sure. Those are 2 laws that I wrote. One of them would ban chain stores, basically ban chain stores within the village boundaries, and it defined, which hinges on 2 things. One is the definition of a formula business, which has, I think, if I remember correctly, 5 or more locations with any, I think something like 2 or 3 out of a list of however many other criteria, such as uniform architecture, uniform menu, uniforms, decor, things like that.
And the seeker?
Well, the other thing is the chain store ban would then basically create a new category. If you're familiar with the use tables in the zoning code, there's permitted uses, there's special use permits, and this creates a new category called prohibited uses, and just defines the formula business as a use, and then prohibits it in all the zoning districts in the village. So this is something that I worked on with Spencer McLaughlin
I remember you
long time ago, so
yes.
I'm bringing it back to this iteration of the board. The secret law is, unlike the town, because you guys have, 35, 37 square miles outside the village, something like that? Well, while we only have 1.8 square miles, which means that we were able in mine and Rebecca's first term, to hire Hudsonia Limited to map all of the potential wetlands in the village, something that is just financially not doable for the town, because there's just too much acreage involved. So unlike the town, we actually have a map of where all the wetlands and water, where all the surface water is likely to be, or where it is. What we don't know is whether that's a drainage ditch or whether that's an ecologically significant habitat of some kind. So what this would do is municipalities are empowered to create their own list of type 1 actions, which simply requires an environmental assessment form and certain other hoops to be jumped through, basically to prove whether or not this resource is something that needs heightened review. So what this would do is it would take that map that Hudson prepared and say that any parcel that has a wetland, a watercourse, or a buffer area, any project that's on that parcel is automatically a type 1 action. So you have to then, like the town's wetlands law, either hire a wetlands ecologist to go out and ground proof what you see under the planning board's direction, or if you have some prior study that's shown it's just a drainage ditch, for example, that might be acceptable. But this seemed a better way for the village to handle wetlands protection than the town. It's appropriate for the town to do what the town is doing in terms of the 50-page, because I helped write it 13 years ago, one of the early drafts, because you just don't know where the wetlands are, and it's physically impossible for you to figure that out without a huge grant. This seemed a more elegant way to protect wetlands while leaving the real decision-making with the planning board, rather than having a kind of imposed set of regulations, because our map of all the wetlands in the village gives us that flexibility since we already know where they all are. So that's the gist of it, yeah.
But isn't it, sorry, I know we're gonna talk about this, but isn't it not just wetlands, it's other critical environmental areas?
That was an earlier draft of the law. I narrowed it to, or I should have narrowed it to the wetlands because a critical environmental area requires a map. And we have the map in hand for the wetlands, but we don't have a map. Because one of the earlier version I had other type 1 actions included any building that was historically not earmarked, historically labeled as significant. I think any mature tree at a certain diameter or breast height, which is the scientific way to measure, that's how you measure the size of a tree. So we want to protect the 500-year-old oaks if they're around here. And there was a whole other longer list of other things that would be type 1 actions. So it got narrowed to this one because it's the only one I had a map for. And we'd have to find the resources to make the maps for the others.
Well, we can talk
Yeah.
more about it when we get to
Thanks,
it.
just was
Sure.
curious when I was looking at your agenda.
And I'll send you the copies of the law
Okay,
if
thanks.
you like.
Actually, it was in the packet that was sent out to the town board.
Oh, okay. They have it now.
Okay, we
great.
just, it went that far.
Okay, so let's go.
Dan,
Yeah, Dan, please.
Sorry, just one item I'd like to add too is, for a brief discussion on, I'd like to talk about possibly having an August joint meeting at Huguenot Street. Technically, that would be the village's meeting, so I'd like to just have a discussion on that, that's all right.
Sure, we'll add that. Any objections?
No.
Okay. So we've got 5 items now. Any more agenda items for the joint meeting?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Same for the town, I'll move it. Want a
Second, sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's carried.
All right, so let's go right down the list. Discussion of an RFP for a master plan consultant. I think the village attorney, we had Will draft
Yes.
one for us,
Yes.
which I think is actually very good. There are some blanks that are in it, and if we get this far, I'd like to propose that the village planner be empowered to just fill in whatever blanks. There's some boilerplate, some dates, things like that about when the bid opening would be. I don't know what a reasonable schedule might be for something like this.
1 month.
If that's what, I don't know what the standard is. I can't recall, to be honest. So
1 month. Oh, don't you have?
I'll just kind of open the floor. What do folks think about the RFP, about a timetable, about?
Jason?
I probably sent it, I
Jason,
just don't think we, I don't know. if
I
we
don't
did.
believe the town board got this.
You probably sent it in the
Katie,
packet,
did
we
you
just
send
didn't
it?
realize.
You got it.
I did.
Oh, you have it,
I
okay.
did. Yes, I sent a separate memo,
Yeah.
I sent a
You
separate
got it.
email to the
Okay.
whole town board,
Got
and
it.
the whole packet.
I just-
The reason I mentioned Brenda is if you have it with you, if you turn to section 2, scope of work. I'll just hold this up. Project description and study area is filled out, but we have the study area and then it just insert language here. Things like that, I think the village planner could fairly easy plug in the boilerplate that we.
I would be very happy to have Bren fill this out.
I would, but I would like on the front page to change the 2000 census to 2010.
That's a good idea.
On the front page?
Front page, background information.
Not the cover page, the first page.
Right.
Background information.
Section B, 1D.
Oh, I see. Katie, do you have that note?
I do.
Okay.
I have a question before we go through this about, putting out this RFP and whether or not Bren is, as our village planner, qualified to do this work.
I spoke to her about it.
Okay,
and-
that's what I.
Yeah, and she's very obviously qualified to do it. What she
Well,
doesn't
well,
have
I mean,
is the time.
It's, yeah, but it takes a lot.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so much else that would have to be put on this, on the shelf. It would detract from her duties with the planning board, with the kind of the day-to-day planning. So she's in support of hiring an outside consultant to do this, because it would just,
Well-
it's a full-time job for
But if
X
we're
number of
hiring
months.
an outside consultant to do the zoning code, then that would free her up to do this. If she doesn't wanna do this, then we wouldn't need to hire an outside consultant to redo the zoning code.
I spoke with her briefly about doing this, and I thought that it was a good idea for us to continue along the line that we had started, which is to say, to have a consultant work with us. Given her newness, I thought it would be best if we had her devote her time. I made no connection to the zoning.
Well,
You know,
No,
Sally,
to the
consider
code.
this though too, keep in mind that what the RFP is, putting out the RFP doesn't obligate us to
no,
hire anyone.
I'm
So-
not disagreeing.
So it could be an
Right.
interesting, we'll see, you know, it could be interesting to see what prices and scopes and work we get back, and then compare that to what we would lose by having Bren do it, and do the kind of cold cost benefit analysis then. Is it worth spending 50 grand or 100 grand? Or is it worth putting aside the other things we've asked Bren to do to focus on this for 3 months or 6 months?
But I just wanted
Yeah.
to bring that up. I mean, you know.
Oh, no,
If I'm
no,
having
sure.
an outside consultant do this.
But
and
we
an
can
outside
fold that into the
consultant-
conversation once we get the prices back and see what
Alright.
universe we're dealing with.
Okay.
And
Consultants.
plus, she
Is that
will have
reasonable
some
for
level
you guys?
of oversight anyway.
Right,
That-
that's true.
That's what I was thinking about is how can we work into maybe this, the idea that the work could, maybe some of it be done by her as the person who is more familiar with our community, as our village planner, as opposed to all of it done by somebody outside. I mean, I'm also just trying to find the best way to save us money.
I also think we ought to apply for an empowerment grant because it's a shared project.
They're not shared services, right?
Shared,
Is that the,
shared.
is that the
It is
threshold?
gonna end up in
What's, is it
essentially
shared project or shared services project? That's the
Well,
threshold.
Well, it could be, I mean, it
Look
might be able
into
to,
it.
it might be
Right.
able to be phrased as a
Yeah,
shared services.
I think it
because
would
we're
be eligible.
sharing services to do comprehensive planning.
And do we wanna wait
What we could do, I think,
to see if the grant comes through? Is
no,
that-
what we could do is.
No, I think
apply
we're gonna
for
do it
the-
simultaneously,
Yeah.
Jason,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
We've already
Tracks.
budgeted it
if we
anyway.
get the grant, all well and good, we've
Right,
set
you
the
get
money
money back.
aside for the comprehensive plan, so we have that money, and if we can get some
I
to
have bring
supplement
up-
it,
I have to
That's-
bring up an alternative that has been presented at the last planning board meeting.
No master planning?
No, the planning board recommended that they take on the primary responsibility for
The village planning.
for planning, and they would do this in collaboration with the planning board of the town. And of course, the planning board's attorney, George Rodenhausen, was present at the time. And so he was consulted about this, and he says that I guess in municipal law, there is a provision for a planning board to be the principal agent. But they know, of course, that they still have to present the planning, a comprehensive plan to the, in this case, it would be the joint village and town boards.
Would this replace an outside consultant, or would it supplement the outside consultant?
I think that would be partly our responsibility to decide.
Town could clarification.
Sure.
Are they asking to just be the lead on the project, or are they asking to actually do the work in place?
Remember, this was a conversation at a meeting at which they had another agenda, and they were covering that agenda, so this did not take all night. It took
I mean, I
a
do
brief
my-
period of time. I
my-
asked that question,
Yeah.
forgive me,
Good,
Sal.
good,
go ahead.
I asked that question because it's like I
Right.
said, well, quite frankly, all of you are already doing other things. Are you now proposing that you would take this on, with what assistance, with what resources, and so I think their proposal, which I don't know if their proposal has gotten to, have the minutes of the planning board been officially filed? And
I haven't seen them.
I saw minutes recently.
at any rate, they changed from saying we want to do this to making a recommendation to the board that they be given the authority to do it with whatever assistance we need.
Might we, Tom, ask for a proposal from the planning board which would comprehensively describe what they are offering to do, and we consider that along with the RFP?
And along with the RFP and with Brenda, but we would also have to have a joint memo, I guess, from the town and village planning boards to make sure the town planning board is even on board with this.
My sense is, I mean, we talked about this, I think when we were talking about doing this to begin with, and we wanted to talk about the two planning boards, and I thought everybody said that they were already too busy, and I know that the town planning board's got some really major projects in front of them, and, so if the town planning board could take it on, I'd love it, but I would be really surprised based on the workload that they have in front of them. My expectations, I think what they're saying is they would like to be the lead agencies instead of the town and village board, let the planning boards be lead agency, which is not necessarily something
So
I'm
the
averse
interface
to,
with the consultant.
but I still think it means us hiring a consultant and then them working with it.
Right.
That's what I.
I hope that's
Right,
what
they would just be
Yeah, that's
the
the lead,
steering
right,
committee,
exactly.
perhaps.
They did not want it to be called.
Okay.
Well, I used the term that we used like oversight and whatever.
Oversight
And
committee.
they did not think that they should be merely an oversight committee, but that they should be
But
involved.
aren't we gonna use the same format where there's public meetings
I
and
would be
things
very
like that, where
happy
the,
if we
the
did,
planning
yeah.
board members could come?
I just
Board
want to make,
members could come,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so the
I don't want
input-
us to
But still-
take any action now without having heard that they made this motion at the last planning board meeting, which was just this past week.
Okay, I don't think any of the three options we have discussed preclude each other.
Okay?
I think we can act on the RFP tonight. I think we can ask the planning board to submit a proposal in consultation with the town planning board as to what they are willing to offer to do. And I think the mayor will speak with Bren about her role in this, and we'll get a report on that. But I don't think they're exclusive. I think we can go after the big picture.
I think they should all remain exclusive. I think this is just my opinion, the RFP should go out so that we can have some response come in.
I agree.
You can wait for the minutes and find out what the
Right.
village planning board's idea is. And we can apply for that grant, and we can, once we know what we're gonna do, we can interact with the new planning and zoning and whatever it is. Director of Planning, Zoning, and Code Enforcement. But I think we should go out with the I think the RFP should be out by Monday, July 7th. And I think we should ask for a response within 3 weeks.
I agree.
But that's just my opinion.
I agree.
Because we aggressively might be the wrong word, but we did pursue this. We did want this to move forward. We did want it to occur. We did select a candidate, and I think we should see what's out there. And at least get it moving forward. And then we can make a decision based on what comes back. If it comes back at $150,000 for 12 months worth of work, well then I think we need to revisit it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move on behalf of the village that we accept and submit the RFP out by July 3rd, 7th,
Monday, the 7th,
But
okay.
give it 30 days, not 3 weeks.
30 days to
30 days for an
return.
RFP.
And I'm moving a motion. Okay, that, I know what we're doing. I'm going to move that we send out the RFP, that it be expected back in 30 days. That simultaneously, we ask the planning board of the Village of New Paltz to submit whatever it is that they are proposing. We will ask the town planning board to review and see if they can be a part of this. We will seek a written recommendation from the village planner, and we will begin the process of applying for a grant to cover
Is this all one
this.
motion?
Yes.
All one
of-
motion.
Of course.
I'll
It's-
second,
it's
but
Sally.
can we make sure that we just say that with, the village planner's additions
Yes.
to the RFP?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, filling in the blanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And could I make
Filling in the
could I make an amendment?
Sure.
Like, friendly, that rather than immediately go for the grant, we asked Mark Blauer, the village grant writer, I don't think you guys have a grant writer, the village grant writer to advise us on what grants might be best suited for this.
I don't know
And
that
that-
he is familiar with the
I don't know either,
empowerment
but
grant.
he's more familiar than
One
any of
night
us.
we had a discussion, he said he did not know.
Okay.
I'd like to make a potential friendly
So
amendment.
I'll withdraw mine.
I'd like to make my preference would be that we make a standalone motion to go out for an RFP. And, you know, make that motion of itself, then all the other stuff we can add, you know, after.
No.
Well,
Have
so
that-
I-
accept the
well,
friendly
see, the thing
amendment.
is, I'm not, for me to go back and ask the town board to basically put together a proposal for what they wanna do on this.
That wasn't what I said. I said the village planning board is going to be asked for their proposal and reviewing it with the town planning board. The town planning board says to the village planning board, we don't have time, we
And
can't
we
do
would,
this with
and we would discuss that proposal when we get the numbers
Yes.
back from the consultants,
Yeah,
as one possible option.
I wanna confirm that if we send this out on the 7th,
Okay.
then it's not unreasonable, 30 days later would be the 7th of August, and it's a weekday, so it would still be, okay, it wouldn't fall on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, so let me see if I have the highlights of Sally's motion, just so we're all on the same page.
Why don't you just
Send
have,
out the
why don't you have,
send out the RFP with Brenda White's,
filling in the,
insertions.
Mhm.
Second would be to request the village planning board in consultation with the town planning board, I suppose.
well, they're gonna have to
All right, so
tell
let me back
us.
up, let me simplify this. That the village planning board put a proposal in writing to the joint boards as to their idea for running this process.
Right?
Is there a third thing?
The third thing was that we will ask for a
Oh.
recommendation regarding Bren White's involvement in this. And the fourth thing was we will apply for a citizen empowerment grant.
Or, can we open that to other grants as well?
Oh,
Yeah, there may
any-
be other
yes,
grants.
And
Okay, so
any other
let's,
grant available.
okay, so I think, I'm gonna guess we're all on the same page on 1 through 3?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I am.
Any, just
I am.
straw poll, anyone not like numbers
I'm
1 through
on board
3?
for all of it.
Yeah, I have no issue. with
Okay,
1 to 4.
number 4 is the only one that is tricky, only because it's not specified who's actually doing the work. So does the town have a grant writer? Who do you guys use?
Vicky Cornelius, don't react.
I'm trying very hard not to.
All right, let's just
So,
vote on my first three and then
How
let's
would
deal
you,
with the
well,
grant.
okay, well, we can do that as a separate motion then.
Yes,
The grant
So you
part.
withdraw the grant part?
Yeah.
Okay, so as,
I second
do you
that.
have it as,
Ariana.
you sure you got it? Katie?
She seconds.
It was confident, okay. So on behalf of the village board, it's been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
On behalf of the town, I'm gonna move the same motion.
Jean, would you like to second it?
Maybe for discussion.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Is that a second?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, so do you want to discuss it?
Okay, so the discussion for the town is, do you want to break it down into individual motions?
I did, but it didn't happen,
Are-
so it doesn't matter, it's
are-
not that important.
Really? It's not important? I
It's
think
your board.
I think we can work with it.
I think it's fine. I mean, I just think doing a
Yeah.
standalone RFP gives the integrity for the RFP, and it's not, has all these other issues behind it,
Okay.
but
Okay,
I'm not
well,
gonna
we'll
fight
get
over
it. That's okay. We'll get the RFP back in August and then we'll all address it again. All in favor? Of
Aye.
Dan's motion?
Aye,
Aye.
motion's
All
carried.
right, so I'd like to make a motion that this may work for our benefit, having two governments. It does happen once in a while. What do you all think about having both Victor and Mark advise us on how we might procure grant funding for a master plan? And then we'll have two recommendations from two different grant writers. We can see who they list. If it's the empowerment grant, great. If it's some other source of funding, I know the Hudson Valley Greenway used to give money for grants, so it could be other grant sources out
Yeah,
there.
any other grant.
Yeah, so-
Unfortunately, the Greenway grant, I think the town spent $70,000 on their comprehensive plan that they never adopted. And they did get a Greenway grant, but it was $7,500, which is okay, it's still money, but
Right.
it's certainly not,
Well, does that sound like a good use of
Yeah.
our
Fine, it has
resources?
to-
It's not-
So I'll make that a formal motion that we get a recommendation from both Mr. Cornelius and Mr. Blauer as to grant funding for master plans, joint master plans.
But I would like that by the next joint board meeting so we can act on it.
Which is
and
when? Do
approve.
anyone have a
It's
calendar?
Well, that would-
July
Every-
24th.
It's a third
Okay.
Thursday. We scheduled it, Jason.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
the 17th.
every
Sorry,
the
this is the
third.
late one.
I just can't remember the date
Yeah,
in the top of my
well, I
head.
don't know what the date is,
Yeah,
it's just,
it's
it'll be it's the fourth Thursday of July.
And it's the 24th.
Okay, so,
That's the 24th, yeah.
so my motion amended to have those memos distributed in hand and distributed by July 24th.
So that we can discuss it.
Yes. Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion?
Sure, I'd like to make the same motion on behalf of the town.
Would you like to second it for discussion? I'll second it. Do you want to have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 That was
Motion's carried.
enthusiastic.
Come on, Gene, free money.
You know
Free
what?
money, Gene, free money.
Yeah, but you're paying for it twice to
Right.
get it once. You're paying for it twice. You're paying for it, we're paying for it. I, as village resident, am paying for it twice.
Well,
And
would you
so
like to
are
propose
my
something else?
constituents.
Would you like to
No,
propose
I
something
already
else?
voted for it, okay?
We can
I'm
change our
sunk.
votes. We can change our minds. Make a persuasive
Can
case.
we move on?
Pay for it twice, get it once. Waste.
Or get twice as much advice.
What are we paying for twice?
I'm paying twice, you're not.
No, but we're only getting recommendations
Yeah.
and come July,
just
we'll
So you
decide
can, okay,
which
so let me
grant
just
writer
ask.
we're gonna use
Right,
and how we do it.
but you get to,
should
you get an
obviously ready
opinion
to
from your
concede.
grant writer for free?
Sometimes
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
he'll give us free advice.
Okay, yeah, good.
We're not paying for anything yet.
I mean, we pay our grants writer a set fee every quarter, a month, or whatever, so, I mean, it's not a big deal for me to ask them.
Okay.
All right.
You
So
done that one?
moving
Yeah.
on. Moving on.
Yeah.
I think that's all we've got. Moving on. Disabled person accessibility at Morello Pool Playground. Susan, Dan, Jean, who?
What
Where did this come from?
what this was all about was, every year, in the beginning of spring, we get phone calls from people who wanna be able to go to the playground with their kids and they can't get in.
Yep.
And, what had happened was, a while ago, a federal justice case was brought against the community because of the, playground not being handicap accessible. And so therefore, and the only way it's accessible is through the pool, so the pool has to be open for anybody to use that. So the playground was shut down and the playground has not been opened up again because it's not accessible, and until it's accessible, Carol Connolly spent a lot of time, with, the federal court, dealing with this issue and stuff. So we get calls all the time. When the spring came, we got calls again that people wanted the park open. It can't be opened unless there's some handicap accessibility done to it. I know Chris at one point had talked about what could be done, and I don't think it's that big of a deal, and I'm sorry because I thought I was gonna see Chris again before tonight's meeting, because he's so busy with the pool, which we'll do a quick update. But I think he had given us a cost or whatever. I know that there are some people on the boards who feel that the playground shouldn't be open when the pool's not open, because there's been vandalism and stuff, and they don't wanna see it open when the pool's not open, but there's a lot of people in the community who feel that they want access to that playground, and, so that's when we sort of said, let's just get it back on the agenda for the two boards to discuss where we might wanna go with this. So that's why it's on the agenda.
Not having been on the board when all of this
Yeah,
happened, I
me
went
neither.
back and looked. And part of the grant for the park to be created had nothing to do with the Moriella pool. It was supposed to be a park for the public to be able to use. And so I agree with you. And I'm gonna move on behalf of the village that we find out and Chris make a recommendation on, and it is a capital expenditure, so we will be participating if the board agrees, that we get an estimate on what it costs to, make the park handicap accessible, independent of the pool, and that a system be established how if someone's there, they don't just walk into the pool, but that's later. I think we should do what we're recommending.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're not making any commitments right now, other than the fact that we're gonna pursue it and then get back together to talk about how to pursue this, but
This is to make the park
it's a.
accessible even if you're not at the pool.
The only way to, the only accessibility to the playground by the pool is through the pool.
As
So-
a paying
so-
member of the pool.
Right,
Right.
so.
So
it's
if
to
we make it handicap accessible, the park can be open year round,
That's right.
okay? I'll move it
Okay, do I have a
for the
second?
town.
What are we moving?
We're just moving.
To
we're
get a
committed to
price
getting-
from Chris.
we're
Get a
committed
price.
Sure.
to seeing what it would cost to do it, and to come
Mhm.
back to make, to possibly move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Second.
in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carried.
Alright. Alright,
Which if it's okay, before we move on, just
Yep.
on the kiddie pool, and Jeff's not here, so I don't, and I can try to call Chris, just to do a quick update. Everybody knows, first and foremost, Chris Marks has been working morning, noon, and night on the pool since before the pool opened. He's done an astounding job, and Jeff has been really right there along with him on top of it, and I can't thank the two of them enough. They thought that the pool would never get open for the season at one point, but they were able to get the work done and get it open, and we only lost 1 week. So the pool's open, people are using it, but then there were problems with the kiddie pool. So Chris and Jeff have been working literally, like, he was there for 2 days, since 6 in the morning till like 11 o'clock last night, trying to get the kiddie pool working. He left my office this afternoon to go try one more thing, and they were supposed to come back and let me know if the kiddie pool was gonna have to be shut down for the season, if we were gonna have to go out and get somebody from the outside to come in and fix it, or if they're gonna be able to do it. So I don't know, they didn't come back, I haven't heard from them, so I don't know what the status is, but at some point, we probably also might have to deal with the kiddie pool from a perspective of possibly having to invest something in there. But I know that they've been working really, really hard on it, trying to get it open as quick as possible, but it's been really difficult, they've been dedicating a lot of time, so I just wanted to update everybody, and at some point, hopefully we'll know from Chris what we need to do.
alright.
But they've been really working hard.
Okay, so moving on, discussion of potential solar projects. This was technically my addition, but it was because of there was an email I got from Susan a couple weeks ago about another iteration of some kind of solar something happening in the town and village. So I just thought it would be
Yeah.
useful to talk just for a minute. It shouldn't be a long conversation about what's kind of on the horizon for, like, what the potential is for us on the horizon, and see if there's some energy to do it. I know there were 2 village-specific solar projects that I've been fiddling around with, and then maybe Susan and Dan, I think you know something about this.
Yeah,
Can talk about the Clearwater property and some of the things with Randall that we've been talking about, and some of the new
And then there was also
issues.
another 20 megawatts solar.
Yeah, I just feel, let's put
Yeah.
the half a dozen
Sure.
projects people have been brainstorming on the table, and see if we can't marshal our resources towards one or two of them.
Exactly.
So I'll give you the 10-second version of the 2 that I've been thinking on. One of them has been picked up by our new environment, we have it's not called an ENCC anymore in the village, it's called an EPC, Environmental Policy Commission, and 3 of our members are here tonight. They've started looking into one of these ideas, which is to replace all of the streetlights in New Paltz, in the village, with non-networked, as in not wired together, freestanding solar, historic streetlights. And there's a bunch of potential when you think about how much electricity could be generated and stored depending on the size of the panel and the size of the battery. We could have design elements like park benches or bike racks built into the base of the streetlight, as I've seen. from some companies. We could have Wi-Fi hubs, we could have electrical outlets, and the most dramatic use of these would obviously be in blackouts. I mean, we didn't have a storm last year, but we had Sandy the year before and Irene before that. If we had had one of these hurricanes in November instead of in September, we might have been looking at a much different storm with the weight of ice knocking down trees and us without power for a week at a time. It might be really nice to have the urban center of the village fully lit up with a place you can plug in your cell phone or your laptop, with a Wi-Fi hub that you might be able to get a hold of your family if the power's down all through the Northeast, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a public safety angle, there's the ecological angle, and there's the fact that the village spends $65,000 a year in electricity bills to Central Hudson just for the electricity we use for streetlights in the village, and we have about 277 of them. And then there's some on the there are some in the town, but not nearly that many. Just on the fringes, yeah, you've got some streetlights up trail. But when you do the math, what that works out to is $65,000 a year is the annual payment on a $300,000 5-year serial bond at the interest rates we're getting now. So hypothetically, if we could find a way to replace 300 streetlights with solar historic lights for $300,000 or less, it wouldn't cost the taxpayers a penny. Historic replica, yeah, not historical streetlights. So that we do have some people who are looking into some of that. I know it sounds implausible because having looked at solar streetlights individually, like if you're going to buy one, go on Google Shopping, there are 3,000, 5,000, 2,000, they're all over the map. Personally, I don't see why we couldn't just buy the parts for 300 streetlights and assemble them in the park with 24 volunteers on a Saturday.
But you
No,
have
really.
to buy, you
300
have to buy
lamps.
the poles.
If we had half a dozen, right, if we buy 300 units of each of the parts, and all a solar street lamp is a lamp. We could all go to Lowe's right now and build a lamp. You need the wires, you need the battery, the panels, the post, the socket, and the light bulb. So if we have all the parts and we have the DPW to supervise, why not? How many volunteers could it possibly take to assemble 300 streetlights?
I want to go on record. The last time I did this was when I was a freshman at Powell Memorial.
You've done this
Academy
before?
in the Bronx. Well, a table lamp.
Oh,
Jason, I want prevailing wage.
you work for free. You're already,
I'm not sure.
Anyway, but that's just my little. I personally think we could do it with enough organization, but our EPC is looking into this one. The second possibility
Before you
that
move on for that
yeah.
one though, because when you talked about it, using it so like in a storm you have a backup and stuff, I mean, isn't in a way sort of that the concept of a microgrid, of creating like a microgrid, so therefore you have an area of your urban center and it's based on solar, but it's not just street lights, it's creating a whole microgrid in a way where you have a backup, so if there's a storm, you have
But here's the
places
thing:
where you can go
if the
eat,
grid
places
goes
you can-
down, the grid goes down, whether it's micro or macro.
No, but I thought the purpose of microgrid was that the microgrid is a solar backup, so in an emergency situation, that you actually have electricity in your community via solar through a microgrid
I
concept.
don't know. I'll look into it.
Which is, I'll tell you.
But honestly, it seems like it would just be an added expense on top of the money we're paying now to Central
Well, no, I'm
Hudson.
just saying that in addition to looking at doing it through solar light things,
Right.
I'm just sort of saying you might want to have your group look at the concept of a microgrid, because that accomplishes what you're looking for, which I think we need in the village anyway. It's just it's not streetlights, it's a bigger issue of how you have
I'll
facilities,
look
so
into it.
people can then, during like a storm, they can go have a place to eat, they can have a place to go to the bathroom, they can have a place to make phone calls, they can, it's like you have like a little hub in the village where everybody can come during a storm and exist kind of stuff, so. just-
I'll look into it. Yeah, thank you.
And I just as a real quick thing where I learned about this was at the New York Rising conferences that they were doing up at the state, because a lot of communities that are getting New York Rising money are looking at microgrids, and that seems to be sort of like an issue, and it's something that
Amanda Joe was pushing that.
yeah, it's something that we should be really looking at for a community, and of course it should be in the village.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it to know
Yeah.
anything about it.
I think we're,
We should do
good.
stuff.
The other
Others?
one, I'm sorry, Sally, go ahead.
Go ahead. You-
Oh, the other project I thought of, and then this is the only thing I have for the village, is that the state law allows us to form a public power utility, and you don't need to generate electricity to do that. All you need to do is own the wires and poles. So if we bought them or took them by eminent domain, which is buying them since for those who don't know, eminent domain just forces you to sell at market rate. It doesn't take anything from you. without compensation. The point is I was thinking about this on the village level because, again, we're so dense, it might make sense. The biggest obstacle I've heard from solar installers to why more people aren't doing solar is a kind of interconnected suite of things. One is, you've got, of all the people who might want solar, that pool is reduced by the people who can't afford it, and is then further reduced by the people who don't own homes, and is further reduced by the pool of people whose homes happen to have the right angle to the sun, or don't have the 50-foot high cedar trees next to it, or whatever, right? So the biggest problem is connecting the best solar locations to the actual grid, which you can't do if they can't afford it, or they don't want to go through 50 pages of paperwork for the state rebate or whatnot, right? So my thought was this: since we can form a public power utility, and the treasurer tells me that it wouldn't cost much anything else on her end besides billing, which we do already for water and sewer, we would need to hire a handful of linemen, stockpile some wires and some poles, basically adding to the village DPW. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't provide, if we can own the poles and transmission wires, and our overhead is much lower than Central Hudson's would be, there would never be a reason for the 30-some% rate hike they foisted on us a few months ago. We could, and they're forcing another one on us. I went to a workshop in 2007 where I spoke to the director of the town of Messina, New York, about the St. Lawrence River, which has they have a hydropower plant, but it's the same principle. He says, wherever you look at places that have gone municipal power, whether it's Green Island, New York, or Messina, or something else, you see people's electricity bills drop by 75%, because you just don't need the overhead. I mean, we can do it so much more efficiently than anybody else. Not only that, if we had this, I don't know the number, but say 3 people who in the DPW who were linemen trained to go up and deal with the down power lines and such, every time there was a blackout, we wouldn't be waiting on Central Hudson to fix Poughkeepsie or Kingston first. We've had our own dedicated people getting new poles up and running as soon as the power went out. That's their job. So we've got the lower rates, we've got the faster service, but what we can also do is the software that these solar companies use to decide whether your house, Gene, is a good fit for solar. You know, they have the azimuth of the sun and whatever, all that programmed in, can be expanded to the entire village and look at the village as one parcel. Now, I actually found out how much electricity the village produces, and I can't spell it off the top of my head. Something on the order of 100 million kilowatt hours per year, 114 million. I'm guessing. Uses, consumes. So what it would come down to is if we had a public power utility and wanted to be 100% solar, we would need something like 1.4 square miles of solar panels to provide the electricity that the village alone uses. The village. So, not feasible. But what might be feasible is this: you form the public power utility, drop everyone's rates, have the huge fast turnaround service. But then what we do is we say Jean doesn't want to do solar panels, but her house is the best roof. We go to Jean and say, look, we're going to install solar panels on your roof at our expense. We will own them. They break, whatever agreements people would sign, so that the village takes full ownership of the solar panels, right? And then we use our bond rating, which is better than the United States of America's. We're getting money at 1.46% right now. We could bond $2 million worth of solar panels and put them on the best roofs in the village, and maybe aspire to 20% of this public power authority having solar, electric, or whatnot. But we could also use some of the money that people are saving in order to fund weatherization programs, in order to fund energy reduction programs, because if you're going to reduce someone's electricity bill by 75%, if you reduce it by 65%, they're still going to be happy, and you can use that 10% to pay for things that make the system better. So that one I haven't found a lot of people to help me work on. It's a little bit more complicated. But those are the 2 things that I had in terms of big scale solar potential. But I haven't been thinking about Clearwater. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this. One, I would like a report on the initial cost of the solar panels that we have, how much we have generated, and what the payback has been. Because I'm not sure that they have produced
Oh, they haven't?
what was advertised.
No.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're facing the wrong way.
Yep.
What?
They're totally facing the wrong way.
They're facing mostly the wrong way, not entirely the wrong way.
Yep. Leonard, I'm asking for a report. I'd like to start small, and what would we all think about solar panels at Moriella Pool to generate the electricity that is needed for the pumps, filtration system? It would be a good experiment to see if, in fact, this is worth pursuing. I think if we, because I mean, we must spend a lot of money on electricity for filtration and all of pumping and everything else, and lights. So I would love to see us try there and see. And I'd also like to know from Randolph, whatever happened with the thing that we all,
I can tell you.
no, Randolph, I did not ask you directly.
Randolph is mad at you now.
I would like to know whatever happened
I
with
think Susan's gonna talk to that.
the whole big grant that we were pursuing on
What-
solar panels out at the dump.
And that was
A
just for
landfill.
town
I
and
shouldn't
Village
call
Hall.
it dump.
No, I'm not an expert on it, and Kevin and Jeff were dealing with it more, but from what I remember, the real problem was it had to do with getting the electricity from the landfill to the power station of Central Hudson, and it had to do with some lines that needed to be taken from the transfer station, from the landfill out to where it connects to the lines, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars that Central Hudson wanted, making it totally unrealistic to do something like that. And it was really, again, problems from Central Hudson standing in the way, making it really hard for us to do it.
Don't you
To-
think they'll stand in the way on all projects involving
Technically,
solar?
but I'd like to
No,
talk about two other
no, they don't.
possibilities.
If you wouldn't mind, because this comes up a lot. Central Hudson is, I spoke to the vice president of Central Hudson, they're not opposed to solar because what they're most concerned about is with peak load and load reduction, because they'll get more from commercial customers, big commercial customers that gets eaten up by streetlights and by residential. So when they support residential solar and things like that, what they're doing is they're taking the least profitable users out of the system, or reducing them, and
So they
leaving the
should
rest
be-
of the juice there for the more profitable customers.
Did you ask him if he will give us a grant to
I
rid
didn't.
him of us?
I did not.
Let me
No.
just talk about just two other things, just real quick. I mean, there is a person who owns property in New Paltz that was looking to do a 20 megawatt solar farm, which 20 megawatts is an awful lot of energy. And when I checked in with him recently to see where things were at, he's done an awful lot of work, and I set up for him to meet with key people from NRDC, and to help them work with him with all the NYSERDA stuff and all the state laws and all that. So they've been working together for a long time. But where he's at now is the next phase of what he has to do is a lot of money on engineering. But the problem is it has to do with getting the power from the farm again to be able to sell it and whatever, and that there's lots of issues there. And so before he wants to invest all this money, it's like, where's he gonna sell the energy kind of thing? Even though I had talked about us taking that energy and using it for our municipality, that you become our energy source in a way. So what I had met at one of the New York Risings, the top guy from the state who heads up NYSERDA and Energy, who's very into this project. So I wanted to pull him up to get a meeting with this guy to just sort of say, let's go right to the top. Here's where his problem is. Can you guys help before he invests any more kind of stuff? Well, I had his card, but I don't know where I put it, but finding people's numbers at the state government is the hardest thing in the world to do. So I'm trying to track this guy's number down and set that meeting up. So hopefully there could be some opportunity with this guy that he could end up being the source of energy for us to maybe create this municipal, energy, whatever it's called, that that you're looking to do, which would be perfect. Because if we can have our own energy, then create it. Let's go for it. Absolutely, which is part of the reason why I wanted us to start talking together. But simultaneously, Jason, on Monday, I think right now either at 11 or 12 o'clock, if you want to join me, I don't know if you know Betta Broad. Betta. So Betta is basically working. She's the liaison for Catskill Mountain Keeper and for NRDC, sort of working with the Solutions Project that Mark Ruffalo's behind and stuff. where they're trying to get like communities to become the models to get energy independent and whatever. So I'm gonna meet with Better on Monday, so if you're around and you wanna
Yeah.
meet with us,
I
you
haven't
know,
seen her in
so,
years.
yeah, so we're gonna have a conversation to sort of figure out where and how we can go with New Paltz, and then try to bring it back to, to the two boards to go a next level. So either we're gonna meet at 11 or 12, I'll let you know, Jason, if you wanna meet, and so let us pursue, because they have a lot of resources available through what they're doing to try to help communities grapple with becoming energy independent, and so let's just see where we can go with this and just keep talking. But I just think, part of the reason I reached out to Jason at one point was, I had gotten some things about some town and villages working on it. I knew from one of the meetings Jason had talked about this municipal power source, and so I just sort of thought that together we should be talking about this together as a community about how to move forward instead of independent
Where would this
government.
meeting
So,
take place?
well, Ben and I were really just gonna get together either at my office or I was gonna have lunch with her, so I just haven't confirmed what I wanted. So if anybody else wants to join us, it's not a problem, So it'll either be 11 o'clock at my office or we'll just meet for lunch.
Okay.
The
I can let you all know.
The other thing that Ariana and I are hoping we will succeed is we have applied for solar grant.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do was an experiment because the village has committed itself to 5 more street lights in conjunction and cooperation with the college for safety and welfare issues on
Right,
Platteville
yes,
Avenue.
right, that came out of the.
And we're hoping that we can get the money to make those 5 solar lights, and that would give us
Good
a
start.
really good, what it also would give us a very good indication as to whether this will work village-wide or not. So I just wanted you to know that we are working on that aspect. I think to commit to total solar and without
We're not there yet.
no, without
Having
assessing
fun.
whether it's practical
Mhm.
or not, and this would be a very good test case
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
see whether it'll work or
5.
Dan
not. 5
didn't know.
So,
on
another
Platteville.
thing that I did was, about 2 weeks ago, I met with a gentleman named Sean Bodie. I believe, I know Jason's met with him, I'm not sure if anyone else has, from Prism Solar. And he talked with me a lot about what municipalities are doing or ideas he has for municipalities in regards to solar panels. Obviously, the town's a little different because a number of our structures through New York Rising or through other things, I can't necessarily tell you if we're going to have them all in 5 years or we're not going to be at a different location.
Hopefully
We
we're not
don't
gonna have them in a year.
I was just saying.
Do we hope that New York Rising will
Yeah.
get
Yes,
some
I
of
know.
that money?
So with that being said, it seems kind of foolish to invest a lot in a
Yeah.
town hall that I can't tell you
Yes.
we're going to keep. But there are some locations that I can at the very least assume that we'll keep. So what Sean said he was willing to do is go out to the recycling center, and one of the things that they talked about doing was constructing these solar canopies that they
Yep.
were doing.
Right, right.
And that he would tell us what it would take for us to do it there, free of charge, before we make any commitments or anything, just have a better idea. And we had mentioned, and it's one I just simply didn't think of, Moriello Pool, which is one I had not discussed with him.
And I
Well
thought
done,
of it.
Sally. Yes, you did. And I mean, I just shot Sean an email right before the meeting just to get a status update. If people are willing to do that, I can ask for him to go down there and check it out and kind of get back some preliminary thoughts. There's no commitment that we have
I
to
think
use him
that's-
either,
I think the
but it
more
would give us
information, the better.
a better idea of what we're looking at and what the potential for us
Yep.
is to do down the road. So if people are all right with that, I can
Sure.
easily write him
I
and let you
think
know
that's
about the other project he's working on as well.
Can I add to that too, in
Yes.
terms of any sort of canopy type of idea?
Absolutely.
The water treatment plant up on
Sure.
Mountain Rest we've talked about, and one of the thoughts that I've had, I've spoken with a few other people, is to have some sort of solar collecting unit that can also act as a shade for the reservoir, so
Interesting.
that you don't have as much evaporation from the sun and
That's
what have you.
interesting.
And you know what, Dan, in the sewer plant, we have these 3 greenhouses.
Mhm.
One of them houses reed beds, but we have 2 others that, we already have the aluminum trusses. If we could replace the panels we have now with solar panels that were made to fit, because they
Okay.
manufacture the panels, we wouldn't need any kind of scaffolding or.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly willing to pass all that along, and if we want to invite Sean to a meeting as well, when that
That
work
sounds
is
like a good idea.
complete,
Sure.
I'd
Yeah.
like to do that. That's kind of what I
Yeah.
discussed with him about trying to get him to come
Yeah.
to a meeting.
It
So
needs
maybe
to
what we
come-
can
We
do
all
is,
work beforehand.
we can get him to look at that stuff and then show up and we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
So if you, again, if everyone's willing to do that, I'll follow up and make that happen.
Sounds great.
That sounds
And
good.
just a quick, so you
And
guys
when you
know,
wanna do it?
well, if we can get them to come to.
I was thinking a joint meeting
Yeah,
In August?
I think August is fair, give them some time. I don't know how long these things take.
Okay.
I'll get back to you all via email, just
Okay.
kind of what the sense is. I don't want to speak for Sean, I'm not sure.
Okay.
and just as a quick aside, we
Sounds
also,
good.
we had a couple of months ago, forwarded to our planning board, asking our planning board to start to work on zoning for solar farms in the town. So that if there should ever be an opportunity for a solar farm to wanna come to New Paltz, and over a period of time, I've gotten calls from a number of different people interested in different properties in town for solar farms. So to sort of facilitate, we've already asked the planning board to start working on, George Lithgow had gotten some sample legislation from another community, and we gave it to our planning board, asking our planning board to start to draft legislation so solar farms can be permitted in the town. So, that is already in the works. So anything we do on this project moving forward, at least some of the groundwork is being laid,
Absolutely.
so,
Great. So we've got some places to go.
okay.
Yeah, yes, sir?
Back to the 5 solar street lamps where we're talking about doing the
On
pilot
Platic
project on Platic Hill. There was a request at a recent meeting by a resident on Church Street to also have one in the vicinity of the library parking lot, because there's, the lighting on Church Street is somewhat adequate, but there is a little section there. Yeah, so, maybe if we were talking about 5, maybe if we could talk about a few more, and then looking
Well,
at that.
we are
as one
committed to
spot.
5, and I think that Church Street as a whole, from Main Street all the way past the library parking lot, is absolutely deficient in lighting, and it needs new lighting, and I think we ought to come up with a separate proposal on that, and that has to be dealt with, because if you walk on Church Street between Main and North Front, you might as well not have any street lights,
Much
it's so
better.
bad.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I think we need to have a separate proposal on that topic
Right, for your
and
street.
not tie it in with the 5 that we have as a board committed to with the college. But I do agree with
We
you.
already voted
Yeah,
right
we're-
on it, but yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a good maybe
Do
second
you
location.
wanna get a proposal together?
Sure. And since we're on that, another area that came up was, and actually, I haven't gone down there at night just because why would I? But the municipal lot that's by the water sewage treatment plant that you basically go through in order to get down to the gardens.
We're talking about that with the parking committee.
She was at the
Yeah.
Yeah,
last meeting.
okay, you
and
were at
that's
that
what I
last
think-
meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
That's
I
what-
think
yeah,
that is
where
another
it came
area.
up,
Right.
yeah.
If we commit, I definitely think that needs lighting.
Yeah, because that's a perfect
Yeah.
area for local business owners, workers, etc. to use.
But I
that
think
as a
Church Street
spot.
is essential. I think that's
Yes,
a priority.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really
Yeah.
bad.
So moving
So,
along.
do you want to,
Do we need action?
well, let's add that to the village agenda, Rebecca, because I think we ought to act on that.
Add it to
I
the
know.
village
Alright.
agenda.
Yes.
Fire,
Fire district, who wants to do it?
I do. I put it on the agenda.
Go ahead,
I
Sally.
would like to have a report from the
Oh,
committee
yes.
right now on where we are with the fire district, that we had a meeting with the fire department May 6th, and we have heard nothing.
Who's on the committee? Yes,
That's
Don?
possible. If there were public comments, I would have spoken then. I just want to make if during this conversation at some point, there's an issue of confusion to me on the fire district. I'm just wondering if at some point, when it is convenient to the members of the town council, they address the issue of being in favor of the fire commission, fire district, potentially in favor of that, but have they not in favor of police commission district? I think understanding, resolving those issues would be important for folks to understand this. And just, but it's later at some point, I just want to ask the town board to address that.
I will apologize, that we usually do public comment at the beginning of these, and I just simply forgot to do it, so.
It's the third time I've been to one of these joint meetings now.
No, there hasn't?
No, well, there have been 3 I've been to where I've had to ask.
Alright, well, you know, I'll have to make sure that changes.
Okay.
I think Don's asking a reasonable question, but that is not what I'm asking. I'm asking the subcommittee that was agreed to and appointed on the evening of May 6th to come back with a recommendation to both boards so that it can be discussed publicly, Don. And that has, I've heard nothing, and I want to know
Who's
what
on
we've
that,
done.
who's on that committee?
Rebecca, Ariana, Jeff, Dan, and Jeff is the chair? Who's the
I
chair?
don't know if we ever
We don't have a
appointed a chair. We have a
Is
chair.
that part of the problem?
It's Rebecca, Ariana, Dan, and Jeff.
The problem has been a scheduling issue. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 meetings that we have had scheduled on the calendar, and I would say almost every time, for various reasons, all of them legitimate reasons, with probably 24 to 48 hours notice before the meeting, it's been canceled. It's been unfortunate. It's not that we haven't tried to meet. We've tried to meet many times. We've had probably dozens of emails go back and forth on this. The most recent attempt has failed. I will be honest, we have not talked about rescheduling after that one. We need to do that, but it hasn't been without effort that we try to meet.
Well, that, I
Oh,
understand
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying,
Mhm.
but
Can I
that
also
is
say-
not acceptable, Dan, because we made a commitment that we would do something, and we haven't done it.
Rebecca was gonna
If
say.
nobody has any objection, I'd like to ask Ariana to be the chair of the committee and for the committee to meet and report back to the 2 boards at our July meeting.
Why don't we let the committee decide who's the chair of it?
They haven't been able to do that.
It has not.
Well, how
been
would you
for-
like- how would you guys
Rebecca's
like to-
wanted to say
effort.
something.
Yes. I have been in communication with both our village attorney as well as the attorney who did the presentation for us back then. Both of them have sent me, basically sample resolutions for, what would go in front of the public, which would need to be approved by the board, then put in front of the public, in order to create the fire district. And I've shared those with all the people on the committee. The attorney who did the actual presentation did very specific, town and village resolutions in different formats. So that there could be something that for a joint meeting we approve, there could be something for singular meetings that we approve, and all very simple language where it's not that difficult. And, I forwarded resolutions from both attorneys to everyone, so we have all seen essentially what we
Everyone on the
would need.
committee.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Not
Essentially what we
No,
need.
not
Yeah.
both.
So at least, in terms of my background work, I've been working with the attorneys to get the actual language that would be needed, so that once we do meet, we can discuss the different resolutions. And again, like I said, they're short. Some of them are 1 page. So it's not that difficult in terms of, the actual work that we need to do. It's a matter of us getting all together. It's also, our fire chief is also in on it, as well as the president of the,
That's right.
the New Paltz Fire
But I
Department.
think,
So,
Rebecca, we really have been 2 months now.
I
since-
agree.
So we've got to get off the dime.
And again, I'm not trying to make an excuse here. I think we've had 3 or 4 scheduled
Yes.
meetings, and for various reasons, it hasn't been able to work out. It's not that we kind of started and left off. It's just continually something's come up. It's absolutely
Well,
on our
sometimes
minds.
you have to have meetings without everybody present.
Well,
I understand that.
we were trying to have the majority of people present, and we felt like if 2 or more committee members couldn't be there, that's reason to cancel the meeting.
Especially if it's more than one person from one of the 3 different bodies, which has happened.
Well, can you please have a meeting before the next joint board?
We can talk offline, I
Yes.
think, and try to come up with a date this week and put it on the calendar. And we can let you all know when we're doing that as well, and try to make it happen. The chief actually left, but
No, he's right behind
there
you.
we go. So, and most of us are actually sitting here, so maybe that's something we can do.
Why don't you set a date now?
Why don't you not take up the meeting, because we got
Yeah, we'll take a
Right.
5-minute break
Can,
after.
can I, just ask a quick question of the committee, based on what you're saying, Rebecca? So, I don't, the committee was formed, I'm not sure if the committee was formed to discuss What was the charge of the committee?
There actually were two different versions of it. There was one version that was drafted by the village, and there was one version drafted by the town.
For the mission of your committee?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and what were the two?
The mission of the village was to produce a resolution that could actually go before the boards, the public, that just addresses the formation of a fire district. Not exploration, not looking at options, not looking at this or that, but actually coming up with the actual fire district resolution.
And what was the mission from the town board's perspective?
Our town was more the exploratory approach, to look at it from all angles, and then potentially also make the recommendation that the village was gonna do, but we kept it more open-ended.
So you
But
don't have an agreement
guess
on
what?
the mission?
No, we haven't done anything, Susan.
No,
Yeah,
what?
I think that's an issue though.
I don't,
Yeah, no, I
I don't
mean-
see that as an
Yeah.
issue either.
No.
It was just how it went down. We have not been able
Right.
to sit down and hash that out.
So if I'm understanding correctly, in a sense, what you're saying is you're actually, okay. What a shame. So in essence, what you're sort of saying is you're actually looking at drafting, at coming up with language to put a referendum in front of the public, but, which I'm not averse to by any means, but is there gonna be work done to help the community understand what they're voting on, so they have a clear understanding?
Well,
would have
as with
to-
any referendum,
you would have
you would do,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
to.
So you guys will work on that?
Yes.
Well, I think you literally have to. It's
You do.
state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once they decide what they're recommending to the two boards, then the two boards act to present that resolution to the community. At that point in time, the two boards must have a public hearing, must listen to everything, and then, and only then, do the two boards act based on what they're hearing to present the resolution to the voters.
No, I understand that, it's just that, Rebecca was saying she's working on the actual resolution,
And we
which is sort of,
have-
is
yeah.
like, putting it up for a vote, and it's just that, I just don't know what work is being done to put together the presentation for the public, so if and when they're being asked to vote, they know what they're voting on, that's all.
I can forward the resolutions to all the members of
Everybody.
the boards
Thanks.
beyond the committee.
Thanks.
But
And then,
please,
like I
please,
said,
have a
it's-
meeting and a recommendation by the next school board meeting.
Certainly.
Do I need to make that a
Okay.
motion, or will you promise?
And it was certainly our intention too to have it this meeting. It was not, there were things that were out of our hand that made that happen.
All right, so you're gonna try to have something for the next one. All right, so moving on, Dan.
Item 5.
Item 5. So I met with the new director of Huguenot Street, and we're doing a lot of very interesting things down there. And the idea, it was kind of a joint idea, was that for our August joint meeting, I was wondering if people would be interested in having it at Huguenot Street.
I don't think we need to do that.
I think as long as we provide proper public notice, we can do that because it resides within the
Okay.
municipality. The only issue that would come from that is that we would not be able to stream the meeting live. We would have to be on delay, and I know we do have a little bit of a live viewing audience, but it would be able to air the next day. And then I think it would be a nice opportunity to invite both of our historical preservation committees to come and possibly give presentations as well. And they said that based on their buildings, depending on which house we use, we can fit up to 75 people there. So it's not an issue of not having a space problem. We'll be able to do that. It'll be bigger, more people than we probably could fit in here, actually. So it has not been done before. I think it would be important and a nice way to highlight the heritage of our community. And I was curious if people would be willing to do our August 28th meeting there. And that would technically be the village's meeting, so you'd be kind of giving up your meeting. If you want to do September, that's fine. However, I did pose that date to Huguenot Street, and they can accommodate that. Which isn't to say that they couldn't do a September date, but that was the date that we did kind of come up with.
I know that the Historic Preservation Commission for the village is very interested in this idea. They would like to maybe have a meeting between the village and town historic preservation commissions and them as well. But so I'm sure that they would like to participate. And provided that they could make it afford.
Yeah, and the town, I brought it up with them, and they also really liked the idea
Cool.
as well.
Yeah, I think that if we were having them present on something, they certainly would be interested in participating.
Since it's your village board meeting, I would find it appropriate for you guys to make the decision first, and then the town will just,
I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
I'll move it pending clarification with the village attorney that it is legally proper.
I know it's legally possible. We actually had a meeting in the front yard one time.
Hmm?
We had a meeting in the front yard of the Dale Hall once.
You may have had a meeting there, but it may not have been legal.
Yeah.
I wanna know that it's legal.
It was legal, but we can double check.
It would be August 27th.
Oh, sure, so it'll be a Wednesday, but
Yeah.
right,
that
just
ruins
send me,
Throwback Thursday, but okay, that's.
Well, you guys would give up your meeting and we.
No, I'm just kidding. That makes sense. All right, so 27.
So it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
I'll
carries.
move it for the town.
And I'd like to make the same motion for the town.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion so carried.
So would it be at Dale Hall?
No, I think it's going to be in one of the stone homes.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
I'm surprised no one brought up historically appropriate attire.
I was avoiding that conversation.
Yeah, let's,
That's like waiting.
it's 10 to 9. Let's avoid that conversation.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on. Since we didn't do it at the beginning, I'm going to open the floor to public comment
So
for joint. Excuse me, folks.
The joint meeting is closed?
No, not yet. We should have done this at the beginning. If there's any public comment for the joint boards, the village board will have public comment in a few minutes. But if there's anything that the joint boards need to say, where did Don go? He had
Yeah, I just wanna, is it time to, I don't know, because you mentioned that chain store law, I don't know.
Not yet.
Not
That's
yet.
later.
Okay.
This is the joint meeting. Well, did anyone want to address Don's question?
I didn't
About-
understand
I'll
this
move to
question, quite
adjourn.
frankly.
Well,
I think that
still have some-
Don's question, if I understood it correctly,
Why support a fire commission in a district
If we
if you
remove-
not have a police commission?
if you remove.
Why would you have one commission but not the other?
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant.
It's not
That's a
relevant.
question
It's
from the
for each
public.
other.
I just didn't know if you wanted to answer it.
I'm not here to answer
A
it.
fire commission, a fire district is a independent government body.
Don, we're answering your question now. A fire district is an independent government body. Government body? Governing
If
body.
the community should decide they want a fire district is elected commissioners elected by the public, and they run the fire department, and they're usually experienced people in the fire department. You cannot have elected people to run a police department. The town has to run the police department by law. You can have a commission of appointed people that oversee your police department and take over the town board responsibility, but it's still, a police department is a part of town government and cannot be separated out like a fire district can be. And so it's apples and oranges. I mean,
Not can be, is by law.
No,
Fire
no,
districts are independent governmental
well, I
bodies.
understand that. What I'm saying is the town cannot have an independent police department with police commissioners elected running the police department. The police department by town law is under the town board. A town can't have a fire department, they can only have a fire district. So if the public should choose to want to vote for a fire district, that's the public's choice. But it's not the same thing with the police commission.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The town board,
I'll move to adjourn.
second,
Okay.
all in favor?
And I move to
Aye.
take a
Motion.
5-minute break
Yes,
while,
we're gonna have a short recess while the meeting clears up. We'll come back with the village
and
board.
while they
And
set
what we're
up the
gonna do
meeting.
first, after public comment, we're gonna do the Environmental Policy Commission, and we're gonna get the fire department truck RFP out of the way so
Add
people
it
can
to
get
the
home.
agenda.
Huh?
Yeah, we have to, we have to,
Yeah, once we add it to the agenda, but there's no
So don't
reason.
promise something we haven't had a chance.
Yeah, but there's no reason anyone would not add it.
Oh, it does.
enables the building inspector to work something.
So first or second?
How you doing? To my next November 3rd.
Yeah.
I remember when I was this was easy. They went out of business. I made a first by science there. Yeah, no, science there. They went out of, they were actually a very well-known high school in New York City, Collin Memorial Academy. It was a great basketball. Luau Center, a great star.
So I did something, if you're gonna be mad, it's okay. I'll let you.
What happened?
The law that you're gonna recommend for seeker, that you're gonna say that you wanna be lead agency for seeker tonight, Will just told me today needs to go to county.
Which one? Which one?
The amendment to 212, the law already passed that Brett is writing that amendment to.
There's nothing on the agenda.
We can get it.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
We didn't have everything we needed at the last minute, but we need to do the public hearing for this. I'm gonna ask you about it when we start our own agenda. I have a whole list. We're gonna recommend it for, that we're gonna ask to, we're gonna declare ourselves lead agency, but it also has to go to county. In the hopes of getting it in for next week, I asked her to write up the referral for me already, and she called and said if the board approves it, they can get it in for next week. I hope you're not upset about it. So I have additions, are the requests from Don Kerr to set the public hearing for Bren's amendment, which would also mean that we're declaring ourselves lead agency for the purpose of seeker.
But don't we need to wait for the county to get back to us before we
No.
have a public hearing?
Nope. Well, I asked that, Will said no. We can have it, we can't make a decision unless we have it. We can still have it. We also need to refer Bren's law to the Ulster County Planning Board.
And to the village planning board?
Will did not say that. He just said that Ulster County.
Okay.
The park use request for the Church of the Nazarene, I don't know if you want to put it on without insurance.
All right, I'll do that.
The parking request from Nancy, I think it's Travert. We just got it.
Chalk Festival.
Yes, but it's, the timing on it is bad, so that's why we did try to offer them other choices, like contacting UCAT and seeing if people can park out at the fairgrounds and take UCAT into the village.
Right.
They were not so cooperative about that. Yes, Don took the oath of office tonight, so I just put it there so Alberto can grab it.
Do we have bills and claims tonight?
The request for summer help from Blue.
Yep.
Additional budget modifications from Nancy.
We need a separate motion from that?
I think it'd be nice to just mention it off in the minutes. And if you want to move to adopt the law, that no public hearing is required. And then I'll track Susan down about this meeting on Monday for you. Is that all of them? Is that okay?
That's it? Yeah.
And you might want to do the announcements, though. Walkabout is expected tomorrow to be from Platteville Center Street Lookout, leaving from the corner of Platteville. Big station. Not Platteville Lookout in Center Street. Here, I'll just sit it.
That's fine.
15 years in Empire. And then when I moved out to the West Coast, I was the president of the institute. And concurrently, I was in Anyhow, I lived a long life.
All right, let's get back to order here.
Actually, Jason, look out south Oakwood Terrace and Center Street, even from the corner of Platteville and Lookout.
Look out South Oakwood.
Look out south Oakwood and Center Street.
This is where we're going walking?
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, Sally.
Your neighborhood.
Yeah, our neighbor.
All right.
Our neighborhood.
So we've got quite a few additions, most of them minor. So I'll go through the list and see if I forget anything. I'd like to move to amend the agenda for the following items. One, update from the Environmental Policy Commission. 2, update on the fire truck RFP. 3, a park use request from the Church of the Nazarene. 4, some budget modifications regarding federal funds from the treasurer. 5, request for approval to hire the second summer help position we budgeted. 6, a memo regarding parking regarding the Chalk Festival. 7, a discussion of local law that we had the public hearing on tonight regarding section 86 of the code. And some action on the local law we wrote, the one sentence local law we wrote at the special meeting we had with the building department. And I'll get to the particulars of that when we get to it. As well as
That's
an
the
executive
secret
session.
first, 212, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other additions to the agenda?
I just want to remove the approval of the waste hauling RFP from the consent agenda because I wanted to talk to all of you about it.
Okay.
Which
As
one
well,
are you?
The waste hauling RFP.
You wanted to take that off? Okay.
Yeah.
as well as remove number 8 because we're waiting to meet with Blue about that. That was
Right.
tabled from our
Yes.
last meeting.
Thank you.
The, motor
And I'd like
I have
to
a fire
add
truck
the
already.
purchase and installation of no truck signs for the roads that we by law have banned tractor trailers from, and those roads are not, there is no signage, so truck drivers do not know they're not supposed to be on those roads. Ariana had brought that up at an earlier meeting. I think we need to move to purchase the signs and install them.
I had emailed Blue about at least 2 of them on Platteville Avenue and on Huguenot Street, and he said, "Thank you for bringing it to my attention," and is already moving on it as far as I know.
But I think we
So-
have to authorize the purchase of it because it's not,
Okay.
okay?
All right.
I want to add an executive session to discuss the employment history of particular employees.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll
Wanna
move the agenda.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Comment on the agenda?
Yeah, and on anything on the agenda. But Kevin, Chief?
What you were talking about before.
Yeah, I'd like to request a few minutes of the board's time to discuss a proposal. Probably about a year ago, I became interested in purchasing a John Deere Gator type utility vehicle for off-road brush firefighting, as well as be equipped to remove injured people from the woods, which we have done last year probably 4 or 5 times at the request of the rescue squad. We've gotten injured people off the rail trail, off the trails up on the mountain. And most of the time what we do is we carry them out, which is, manpower intensive and unnecessary most of the time. So I demoed a John Deere Gator from a company that sells such vehicles in Goshen about a year ago. I demoed them up at Station 2. We talked to a couple departments that had them. They brought theirs over. We played with them. They're beautiful vehicles. The state bid price on this agency from Goshen, so therefore there'd be no need to go out to bid on it, state bid, for the vehicle I was looking at was $17,000 for the vehicle. Following that, I would have to buy what's called a skid package that goes into the back. It has a water tank, it has a pump, it has hoses on one side for brush fire. And then on the other side, it has the capability of putting a stretcher in there for evacuating people, injuries out of the woods, along the rail trail, along the river, anywhere. So that piece of equipment that goes into the back of the $17,000 Gator is about $6,000. And then we have to look at a trailer to tow it to wherever we need it, if we can't just drive it there. Obviously, if the request was right down here on the rail trail, we would just drive it from the firehouse down there. But if the request was somewhere up on Mohawk's property or Mountain Rest Road, we would trailer it to a spot, unload it, and do our thing. Last year, we probably had probably 5 times that I could pull the records that we actually carried injured people out of the woods throughout the village and town, as well as several brush fires where we called in these off-road type utility vehicles to assist us. One very large one was up on North Ohioville, which we were there for a good part of the day. So that being said, we were looking at 17, another 6, 23, maybe 2,000 for the trailer, $25,000 total, brand new. And as I usually do, I get an idea in my head and I search around, and I have found one that is being sold now, used, from a fire department in New Hamburg, down at Poughkeepsie.
Mhm.
They have one, it's 5 years old. They are getting rid of it, only because, not that they were dissatisfied with it, they're getting a larger one. This is the exact size that I demoed. It comes with a trailer. The only thing it does not come with is the skid package that goes in the back. They're taking that and putting it onto whatever they buy in the near future. So that being said, it's 5 years old. It already has all the emergency lighting on it. It already has all the off-road lighting on it. It's a diesel engine in it, so it is virtually indestructible and will run forever. It's four-wheel drive. It's a John Deere, which is a quality name. It comes with the trailer, which is valued at probably about $2,000. And they're asking $9,999 for it. And the only reason they came up with that figure is because the commissioner said 10,000 or above, they have to advertise their surplus equipment and take bids on it. Anything under 10,000, they can dispose of however they see fit, i.e. selling it to another department. But once they cross that $10,000 mark, it has to be advertised in the paper and accept bids, yada, yada, yada. It was offered to me because I am personal friends with the chief of New Hamburg. He knew I was kind of thinking about this. He said, hey, I got one. It's in beautiful condition. So at this point, what I'm looking for is approval to go and look at it and report back to you at the next meeting as to whether I think it's worth the money, which I'm telling you it is, but I would like to see it, I'd like to drive it, I'd like to have a mechanic look at it, and then come back to you and request that probably at the next meeting.
So you're talking about $16,000?
No, I'm talking about
With the,
to get the trailer and the gator, correct, without the package in the back.
right, but you need the package in the back.
Yes, we do. I think
So
I could
that's-
probably find that $5,000 or $6,000 somewhere in my budget.
But the
But
upper
we are
part is-
talking about that.
We're talking about the difference between 19,000 new and 10,000 5 years old.
Correct. For the machine and the trailer.
Right, right,
And then the skid package I will have to probably purchase brand new.
right.
There's multiple vendors that sell that unit.
It's really $25,000 versus $16,000.
Said and done.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
So you
So-
do not have money in the budget?
I
for-
did not budget for this item. I believe that if I think that this thing is worth the $9,999 that they're asking me, then I would probably go to Nancy and just try to look to take the money out of capital reserve. Taking that amount of money out of capital reserve is not gonna affect whether we can or cannot purchase trucks.
Okay.
It's a small amount of money out
We've
of
got to
capital
figure
reserve.
out the funding pattern.
So I'd like to have you guys tell me it's okay to go look at this thing, and if I will be here at the next meeting, I hope if I'm not in Alaska, but either way, I'll have somebody come.
I'll move that
I'll be
we
in
allow.
Alaska.
I have no problem.
Yeah, I'll second, I've got no issues.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So
Yeah. Kevin.
thank you. So the chief of New Hamburg, I will call him tomorrow morning and let him know that we are interested in it and are gonna look at
We
it.
all get a ride on it.
I'll drive right to your house, Sally.
Be injured first.
I'll drive right to your house. Because if I don't tell him we're interested in it, then it's gonna go up to advertisement. He
Right.
gave me first look at it.
Good.
Great.
Thank you.
Let's see
Yeah,
what
our
happens.
next meeting is July 9th, so.
I'll be in Seattle,
Yeah.
getting ready to get on the boat. But I will have somebody here to give you a report on it.
Okay.
And saying, yeah, it's worth the money, we should definitely do this. And at that point, they're gonna ask you to approve $999
And you'll have figured out with Nancy the funding and all that?
Correct.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
Great.
thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Chief.
much. Thanks.
Any other public comment? Bob?
May I put
Yes.
some mention on it?
You may.
Could you all three? So, thanks, if I could, I made some notes and I'm afraid I might not be able to find them if I haven't. So, just to recap, I want to talk about this.
Just before you start, we usually give people about 3 minutes, so you gotta keep it under the,
I'll go fast.
under the mark.
Okay. This thing about the smoke detectors and that, you know, if you find the smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector is missing, then you hold the tenant responsible. There's a statute called the warrant of habitability, which is the New York State housing law, real property law, and that's a judicial decision for a judge. It has triable facts. Triable being at a trial. There are certainly mitigating facts. Who took that fire detector, smoke detector, threw it out. It's commonly known among tenant rentals that when they don't like the sound and they can't stop it and the battery goes dead, they pull the thing out and they throw it in the garbage. Now, so what that does is you've already made a determination on the warrant of habitability with more properly a judicial decision, and you've put that landlord, and what you've done is you have broached his contractual obligation to the tenant, because now, according to this law, you can no longer rent that property. So he has to be out of there. And the landlord has a very serious liability issue where he has guaranteed to that tenant they're going to stay in that property. And you've made this decision that he can't stay there any longer, and now you've got a suit where the tenant's going to turn around and sue that landlord. And it's not the proper thing. This whole thing of tribal issues and what meets law is more properly give it to arm's length arbiter. Give it to the judge. There's a number of items in here in this law that usurp judicial decision making. What's called a constructive eviction, when a landlord no longer provides the house or makes it so he can't do it. If he changes the lock, if he denies running water, if he does those things, it's a constructive eviction that you can't live there. What you're doing with this law is you're making a constructive eviction for the tenant against the landlord, and it's an intervention, and it's a contractual interference. That landlord and that tenant has a contract. I'm trying to go fast, but this is really serious stuff. So I got that one. Okay, that's let's do is
Bob, you have to speak up also.
okay. You have to speak up too. My hearing's going.
Yeah.
So, also evictions, when you say here that a tenant can't live in that property, you're making an eviction, a legislative eviction, that tenant can't stay there. Again, evictions are a judicial process. It's a judge that evicts someone from a house, not the administrative body or the executive function or the legislative. It's really up to the judge. If you have that problem, this law should be reworded that you can take it. Maybe the building the inspector could take it to the judge. Frankly, he could make application to the judge on behalf of it. It's not a problem. If you look at your mortgage, there's really an interesting thing. Every mortgage says you got to keep the house up, you got to do this, you got to pay the mortgage, and they always give you a time to cure, because certain things happen. People have problems. A tree falls on your house, and so now the bank says, hey, you know what? You're really not conforming to this mortgage. We'll give you 15 days. We'll give you 30 days to take care of it. There's no time to cure these things. And we live in a world that's not perfect. Things happen. Water breaks. You guys supply the water. You know that. You got water main breaks. So something happens. The landlord can't supply the water. Blackout. That guy's gone. There's no time to cure for the landlord. Number 3, I have a very serious concern here with some wording, and intentionally or not, or innocently, and I think it is innocently. I'm personally very worried about that. And that is, it says here that the form, the real property application, the form shall include but not be limited to, and it's got a list of things. And we had some issues with the first one, where you wanted the building inspector to collect all the names, addresses, and responsible parties of the tenants. It's very NSA-ish, you know. I'm really worried about, I personally am very worried about what the state law calls individually identifiable information. And so, and to moreover that.
We're not asking for that, Bob, but just to short circuit that argument. We're not asking for names.
Let me
and
finish.
addresses of
Let me
tenants.
finish. Let me finish. What happens is I would rather see in your law something that would prohibit future building inspectors or future legislation. I would like to see it say something like, in the law, that says you would not collect that list, or preferably what I would like to see it say is this, and I do believe you have the authority to do this, to say any names collected are considered to be individually identifiable information and are sealed from public and will not be released under freedom of information. Otherwise, anybody who's a stalker, who wants to know where someone lives, and if they're going to school in New Paltz, can't just go right into the building inspector, because it even says here, the building inspector shall make all these records available to the public at any time. So if you're some person from Long Island, and you come up and you've got a stalker following you, all he's got to do is find that little tidbit out, and he's got your name and address. That's very dangerous, very, very, I wish you would, hope you'll reconsider.
It's not in the
that.
law, Bob.
What is not in
It's
the law?
not in the law. There's no list of tenants anywhere in the law.
What I'm saying here is it says here that under.
That's not current.
I got the one that just came around. I'm looking at this one. What it says is this. Maybe I didn't explain.
No, I know it from the.
What I'm
past.
saying is, under 129A, you know there's no water. The water is.
That's what I know.
It says, such form shall include, but not necessarily be limited to. I would like to see you guys rewrite this and put something affirmative in there that says that you have a special category for individually identifiable information, and that if it is collected in any means through the law enforcement powers granted to the building inspector, that will be deemed. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thanks. That it will be deemed individually identifiable information. It will not be subject.
It's not in the law, Bob. I don't know how
No.
more clear I can tell you. It's not in the law. Well,
Item
you're right.
Item F.
Okay, wait a second. Wait
You're talking about item F on page 3,
No, I'm talking about 129.8,
Right.
129.8.
It says tenant list.
A.
Yep.
No,
and
129.
and nowhere on that list of 11 is the names or addresses of any tenants.
It was.
No.
And when you removed
Well,
it.
the one I got, it says
No.
names, addresses, and contact
Wait,
information.
Let me explain. I'm not explaining myself well enough. What I'm saying here in 129.8A, in the last sentence, it talks about the form of the information that the building inspector is going to retrieve from the tenant. And it says, the last sentence says, such form shall include, but not necessarily be limited to.
Oh, you mean you don't want them to have the authority?
What I'm
to do
saying
it.
is, look, you guys understand this issue. I think you all don't find it to be a proper thing. But a subsequent board, not knowing the history, will say, hey, you know what? Let's have them get the tenants' names too. Why don't we change that form around? And what I'm saying is, there's a perfect opportunity for you guys to say, hey, you know what? Let's send a message to successive boards and successive administrations that we don't want some innocent person's name going on to a database. That's all.
But Bob, that's not what this says. It's only you as the property owner
Yes.
who's doing the renting.
Yeah.
Your name is going to be asked for.
No, but what I'm saying is that the form, the rental property registration form,
Right.
is going to contain information that the building inspector asks for. And at some further time down the road, the building inspector may say, let's improvise this or let's improve this form by adding names to it.
building inspector would not be able to do that.
Okay, maybe a successive board.
Even a successor board could, but I can't anticipate what a successor board will
No,
or
but
will
you
not
could,
do.
you could send.
Because the
clear-
successor board could overturn any language that you wanted to put in.
Understood. Yes, I do. But you know what? They wouldn't have at least the historical perspective. They wouldn't have the institutional memory that you guys have now. And if a successive board did, people would be in here screaming and hollering. And it would be a really, really good opportunity. If you could just put that in, it's just a few extra words, you know, that you're doing that.
I don't see the benefit personally, but please continue with your comments.
Okay.
Because you've got more,
All right.
and
Okay.
there's other issues to get to, I think.
All right. One side issue is you've got a couple of things in this 128A. It says you want in there verification, the signature of the building inspector. Oh, you can't hold the could you really hold the landlord responsible for the acts of another? Suppose the building inspector says, I don't want to sign it.
They'd be fired.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, that's.
If they're refusing to do their job, then they would be fired.
Maybe you should put that in here. And then the second item is, you got here, verification by the building inspector that the property meets the requirements of New York State. Why would you take that liability on yourself? If that building burns down, you've just made yourself a party to the suit, because the guy
That's
says.
status quo, Bob.
What's that?
That's status quo. As in, that's no new law that's existing on us, why we inspect rentals in the first place. To make that
Why
argument
would
is
you-
to say we shouldn't inspect rentals at all because we're taking on the liability of ourselves by claiming that
Why,
we're safe.
why would you affirmatively have your agent assert that that property meets all the things? Why would you go-
Neither you or
Because he's required to now.
neither you nor I are lawyers, Bob, and the lawyers that have gone over this have at least filled in the minefields that might come up. If there's something you're
I'm going to suggest that this is not an opportunity for us
Okay.
to try to answer all
Got
of
it.
your questions.
That's true.
If you have
Yes.
points to make,
Yeah.
it's our responsibility to take that into account,
Okay,
but not to try to
okay,
figure it out in 1 second and have an answer for it.
okay, gotcha, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, why don't you just go through the list of concerns and we'll hear.
Well, the other one is that by the village board's insistent that the property owner keep tenant list and blah, 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 is really, I think, an intrusion of private contracts. I think that a lease and the information contained there too is really a private contract between a landlord and a tenant. And I think that the government's intrusion into private contracts is a dangerous road. And I think you should talk to your lawyer about that.
Our attorney added that, it was not in it, but.
Well, I would suggest you have another one. And then another opinion. Last item here is this. Well, not the last item. On C, on page 5, it talks about the responsibility of occupants. They've got responsibilities, but no penalties. No penalties for them.
What that means, because that's new, I just put that in.
Mhm.
We haven't even discussed this yet. But what that means is in response to some of the concerns from the landlords about not having any responsibilities delineated,
Yeah.
this would allow the building inspectors to fine or to cite tenants for certain things that they come across.
I don't see how, though. How would they?
Because by defining it as their responsibility, it defines who the ticket goes to.
Well, it says here that the ticket goes to the owner of the house, no matter what.
It goes to the ticket, ultimately, yes. If all else fails, then the property owner is ultimately responsible for everything that happens on the
So,
property.
so you listed the responsibility of the occupants,
But
there's
again,
no
you-
penalty.
I won't go
And,
down.
okay. The
I
enforcement,
could debate you for hours.
okay. Enforcement of penalties for offenses, each day is a separate violation. I think that's really a little severe, very severe. Again, it goes back to remedies, remedy to cure, the time to cure a remedy. I wondered about how many metrics you had. I still have my concerns about search and seizure I could cite that stuff, but I really won't. But I'll tell you this is my grand finale. You know, I know a lot of lobbyists, you know, and people say, oh, lobbyists, like it's a bad word. You know, well, lobbyists perform a very important function. When legislators make laws, what they do is they go to the lobbyists because they know that the lobbyist has their finger to pulse for the industry, and they can find industry standards, what's acceptable to the industry, what works and what won't. And so most legislation is written by lobbyists. They come in, they get their input, their input's taken, they tell them this is acceptable in the industry, this won't be acceptable in the industry. Let us help you write this law. And I want to say something. There is in New Paltz, there is a landlords association. I really think that a really, really good thing to be would be this. You don't have to sit down and just say.
You already have.
You have? Have it?
Nobody sat down with me.
We sat down with a tenant landlord committee, Ariana and I were on it.
Mhm.
Leonard was on it. Jonathan attended a couple.
I won.
One. Okay, we came up with
Yeah.
a win-win law, we thought,
Mhm.
and we left the table all in agreement,
Mhm.
okay, that we would propose that.
Okay.
One landlord objected, and the landlords withdrew from support of that law. We tried. So, Bob, what can I tell you?
Yeah, well,
But thank you,
no,
thank you for your
oh,
comments,
Let me
Bob.
just, if I can.
Very briefly, because it's already 9:30.
No, okay, I think it's only fair. I'm on the Landlords Association. Adele Ruger does most of this stuff.
Adele Ruger was on the committee.
Okay, well,
John Johnson was on the committee.
As was Ben Miller.
Okay, but
Ben
which,
Miller
was this the
on.
latest iteration of this law?
Hmm?
Was it the latest iteration of this law?
No, but this law has been
They never came out and
informed by.
supported the law that we had.
What you have is the latest.
Yes, no, I see, this is the, what was that brought to the
No,
Landlords Association?
but the landlord association doesn't write legislation, the village board does, so when it came back, it's been through several conversations of this group of people representing the community.
Okay.
So,
Have they ever-
some of the concerns were adopted, some may not have been.
Have they
but-
ever presented you with a memorandum or any kind of written response?
No.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Leonard, please.
I'd like to talk about certain items either I don't understand or in either case. 129-12 under compliance, it refers to responsibility on operators and occupants regardless of any agreements between owners and operators or occupants as to which party shall assume responsibility. Owners shall accept the responsibility to supply heat and hot water. In that particular case, I have one house that I rent where they pay all the utilities. If for some reason they can't get it together and pay the oil bill, from what I understand here, it now becomes my responsibility.
Then this had, anything in yellow, I don't know whether you have
I
a
do.
copy, okay. We have not discussed that, that has been added
Oh,
since
okay.
the
That's why,
last
the
discussion.
yellow stuff is why it's on the agenda, so we can talk about it.
Okay, so I'll just.
And I will tell you this, everything that's in yellow is existing law right this second.
Okay.
What it was I took it from a section that was going to be deleted and
I'll
added
do
it
these.
in.
I'll be quick, so there's no need to expand on much of these. Maintenance of safe and sanitary conditions in all parts of rooming house premises. Some of these kids, neat as a pin. Some of the others, oh my God. Same thing in the kitchen. Okay. The other thing, sanitary maintenance of walls, floors, and ceilings. I assume that you're referring to graffiti and stuff and walls not falling apart there. I don't really know. I wrote down here no posters or yes,
Well,
no.
Leonard, as I say, anything in yellow, this
Okay.
board
All right,
has
so
not
what I should do is
discussed.
wait till you resolve it then.
Yeah, no, but rooming houses, as far as I'm concerned, that whole part gets stricken because it is already covered by the law in terms of the definition of rental property.
But we
And so
haven't
rooming
had a chance
houses
to talk
do not
about this
get
amongst ourselves.
All right, so
segmented
I'm
out.
ahead of the game.
You're ahead of the game,
I
yeah.
understand,
yeah.
okay.
Okay,
This was actually
I've
put
got
in,
that
put
question.
to meet one of the criticisms of the landlords, that there was no list of tenant responsibilities or delineation of who was responsible for
To
what.
be honest with you, that's the major portion that I read, and I didn't read the rest of it, so I can't.
Nothing else, really nothing else has changed, really.
All right,
That's
thank you.
Sure. Any other public comment? Yeah, John.
Well, first of all, I received the list. I guess it's not the right list of the law. I didn't receive the revised list, so I wish I was here a little bit more prepared to see that. I wish I had the revised list. Why didn't I don't have that? I don't know. But I'll tell you, I'm a very, very honest candidate. And you know, when I was at that one meeting with you, Sally, I made a very important point. And you know, the thing is that I told you that the building inspector works on the behest of the mayor. I told you a few years ago, you as a board, you had a very big issue with our mayor. And as a result of some of the issues, you're being sued by the mayor. I was on the Alice Andrews Facebook group page 3.5 years ago, and I made the desperate mistake of criticizing the school budget. I had questions. Because I had questions, Rebecca said, you should boycott the Groovy Blueberry.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did, but I have proof. I have it all written down.
It was
And so did
your
Steve Casa.
business
Excuse
across the
me.
street from you.
Oh, excuse me.
Specifically.
Oh, excuse me.
John,
Excuse
if
me,
you
but
can't
I'm gonna
speak
keep,
politely-
I'm gonna go on.
If you
I'm
can't
gonna
speak
go on.
politely, please.
So here we have a
don't.
board. I'm speaking very nicely.
Thank you.
Here we have, just let me say what happened. Here we have a board. Now, I'm terrified to death that this building inspector works at the behest of the mayor. We know his behavior in the past. I know my experiences with Rebecca. Now, I'm not questioning Tom, I'm not questioning you, Sally, and I'm not questioning you, Ariana. But I have questions because I don't know, because maybe one of you can lean over to that side and all of a sudden, things are not operating right here. There's abuse going on because a building inspector feels pressure to do something that he doesn't feel comfortable doing, but because he's got a job on the line, he's going to do it anyway. Now, it's happened with Allison Murray. Why can't it happen again? Now, I'm not saying it can happen with this board, it can happen with another board, but it scares me to death. Now, you know, the main problem with this law that I have, the main problem is that our law that's right now in force is not a problem. It's perfectly fine. It's been working for years perfectly smoothly and beautifully. Why are we doing this? Because we have somebody that had problems with the mayor. I feel, this is my opinion, I'm being honest, I feel that our mayor has a grudge against landlords. I feel there's an atmosphere in this village being promoted by certain people that anybody that works hard, that sacrifices, that wants to take care of their children in the right way, it's not good. They're living too good. It just doesn't sit right with them. It's just not right. They have too much. And this atmosphere is pervasive in our village. And I just don't want to see you as a board encourage this behavior. It's just not right, and it's just not fair. This law is draconian. Now, the only way that I will agree with this kind of legislation would be if I had an issue, and if I put the village board on notice that there are some safety issues, like for example at Hasbrook Park. Blue Tour Willinger mentioned that I spoke to him, that it's a safety issue. You have some sidewalks and curbs that are broken up, that I've tripped upon, safety issues. Now, how about if you make the same agreement where if I put you on notice and it's not being done in 15 days, that you folks can be penalized personally or sued personally. You put that in the law. If you're so worried about safety concerns, put yourself on the line. Give yourself the same draconian law. This is not fair. You have to be a millionaire to run rental property. God forbid there's a problem and you lose your license for all the arbitrary reasons that you state in that law, which could be anything. Okay? You do that, who's going to be able to afford putting up tenants for days and days at a time in a rental house? If you guys don't understand that, I'm telling you, each and every one of you, I don't understand it. If you don't understand how you can put that in here, and I know it's his idea, but believe me, he is not a nice person. He is holding a grudge against landlords. And you have a reputation of not paying your rent. You have a reputation. Is there any big deal? I don't know. I'm just telling you. I take this as a threat and as an affront to decency and honesty. And this is absolutely horrendous. I live here with my children. I worked very hard to have this come across when there's no problem. Tells me there's a problem. Tells me there's a very big problem in this village.
Should wrap it up, John.
And I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'm just gonna say last but least, I care about all of you, even though I have my feelings. And I'm being honest with my feelings, okay? But my sense of trust on this board, not all of you, but it scares me because some of you can lean towards a different way and hurt people. And because you want things in a certain way, and you wanna control lands, you wanna control tenants, you wanna control the students, everything's too loud or it's too not right. But you know what? You're focusing and you're pointing on the wrong problems. And you're dividing the village, you're dividing everybody. Instead of bringing people together, you're pushing people apart. He wants to work, I want to work, John Johnson wants to work, Ben Miller wants to work, any landlord I know wants to work very hard with you to make this the right type of law. And I know I was at one meeting, but I think we should do it again and start all over again and make this a real fair and working composition. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you,
And
John.
I just didn't want to hold back, and I felt I had to express myself. And I appreciate you giving me the time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? John?
I've been a renter in New Paltz for 16 years. I'm currently still a renter. I'm raising my son in a rental apartment. The landlord that I currently have is an excellent landlord. He has not, and you're going to think this is insane, he hasn't raised my rent in about 5 years. When we have a disagreement, we settle it amongst ourselves. We don't need a law because our argument is amiable, amicable, and whatnot. That landlord I have not seen at these meetings, fighting against the law to protect tenants. As a renter for 16 years, I've been subject to hijinks, tomfoolery, shenanigans at the hands of different and various landlords. I don't want to single anyone out, but there is a lot of need for protection for tenants. So I just want to say that I applaud the board's efforts to protect tenants, and I hope that your concerns are addressed. But I certainly do or can attest to the need for legislation to protect tenants from predatory practices, from unsafe practices, dangerous practices. So I applaud you.
Thank you, John. Any other public comment? No? All right, any announcements by the board? All right, other than that, I will announce that our somewhat weekly walks inspecting the village will take place this Thursday, 6 p.m. We'll be walking down South Oakwood, Lookout, and Center Street, meeting at South Oakwood and Lookout at 6 p.m. if anyone would like to join us. Platicille and Lookout, I'm sorry, at 6 p.m. All right, with that, I'll move, actually, let's see. Why don't we have let's try to get some people home first. So let's do the Environmental Policy Commission and then the fire truck RFP. So Chairman
You
Kerr?
want to do the consent agenda first?
No, we can do that at any time. I just figured let's get people home.
Okay.
And is anyone here for anything else? No? Okay.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. And does an individual need to be present to be appointed? Because we would like to, and Rachel Lagaka would like to be appointed to our commission. I think members of the board are familiar with her expertise and history with environmental affairs, so however the procedure would allow, whether it be tonight or next meeting or whenever, we'd like to ask you to appoint Rachel Lagaka to our commission.
She needs to apply to the clerk of the board,
Yeah,
Okay.
she just needs to send in.
and then she needs to be interviewed, and then it's a recommendation from the mayor.
Okay. I think there's enough of these reports for everyone. It's 2 pages. One longer page and one short page.
Do I have that? That was the email you sent yesterday?
That was an email, that was a message that was sent a month ago. This is
No,
an
this
update.
was, I got this yesterday.
If you look at the
Received
original-
June 23rd
Right with the date on it.
is May 24th.
Yeah, I was just providing an electronic copy of something which I think had been placed in people's packets or at the board table a while back.
So I need the green.
Yep, okay. So, the original law that formed this commission indicated we had to come back to the village board in June with work product. And we've only been in existence for 31 days. So we figured as an alternative, we would come to you and report to you on what we're working on and what we're gonna be asking of you to follow up on, to kind of let you know we're doing our thing. And, the first, item on the list is signage for the Wallkill. And we have been in consultation with Riverkeeper and the local representative for Riverkeeper, Jennifer Epstein. And we'd like to make a recommendation for language be placed at the boat launches and at the locations where individuals enter the Wallkill River. That language is, quote, "This water has been tested positive for fecal matter and has not been determined to be safe for human contact." That's a statement that is defensible.
Straightforward.
It doesn't cite, I don't think it can be open to legal challenge. I think it's squishy enough where it would serve the purposes for a sign. What a bad use of words, squishy enough and fecal matter. I'm sorry.
As we discussed very briefly outside, the water tested by Riverkeeper is tested only during warm periods. And when that water is tested during winter months or into the early spring months, it is not found to contain the same level of fecal matter if it contains anything even up to the 61 parts per million, which are allowable in safe water. So if someone were fishing there or being at the boat launch in February, this sign might not be accurate.
Well, I think it would be, because it has been tested, and it has been tested positive for fecal matter. Doesn't say always, every time, but that has been the result of many, many tests.
It has been the result of many, many tests in warm weather.
Mhm.
So it's safer to go on in the cold than it is in the warm.
It is.
Well, actually, would it make sense to check the language with Riverkeeper and DEC?
By the way,
For-
Riverkeeper has never done any testing of
In
the
the winter.
Wallkill in the winter months.
Probably
Well, then,
helpful to pass this out too.
I guess a question that I would have is the testing that you're referring to that's
Yeah.
been done in the winter, is that testing for fecal matter? Because one of the things that we discussed last night was that other testing for other chemicals has come up not so bad
Not so
in
bad.
the Wallkill and could be swimmable for those chemicals. So I'm wondering if the other testing is not done for fecal matter and they're not testing for fecal matter in the winter, do we actually know that it's okay in the winter?
I can't say with absolute certainty that
That's
that's the
If
case.
That's what I'm suggesting, checking the language with
It's
Riverkeeper.
worth checking. All I want to do is, I would not myself plunge into the Wallkill in the summer months. And nor would I allow any of our children or grandchildren to do so. But I also want to be clear. If we're warning people, then I want them to understand what the issue is that we're warning them about.
I appreciate that.
So whatever qualifications might be required are the qualifications I would like to have, so that we're clear about what we're signaling here.
Well, and a direct work product of Riverkeeper, if we could circulate this on the board,
I'm sorry,
is
go
a
ahead.
more detailed, very much more detailed posting, which they are recommending for posting at Village Hall. So
I admire Riverkeeper, and I admire them very, very largely because they never extend beyond their data, their reports. Their reports are very carefully worded,
Right.
and they do not go beyond what
Yep.
the data that they collect warrant. So I've attended at least 2 extensive meetings with Riverkeeper, you know, public meetings, not private, public meetings. And I think that they do a terrific job. So I'm in admiration of River.
So the idea
But
was,
the point, Don, is they've only tested in the summertime, so Tom's, and they admit that because I asked the question.
Mhm.
So I think what Tom is saying is that to make a blanket statement that is tested for positive for fecal matter implies all year round or continuously. And that's not true, according to the tests that we've gotten back from DEP, who have been checking weekly the water in the winter months.
we debated language for a sign that had as many as 100 words.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult, really. So,
It's a
This
little
is,
much.
this is an issue. I mean,
Yeah.
a sign has to be short enough to be punchy, or
Well-
else, you know, like no parking is
Right.
really pretty punchy. you know?
well, and the more detailed version, and such a sign could have at the bottom, see sign at Village Hall for specifics, or something along those lines. And this, what Jason is looking at, and it's got a lot of information,
Yeah.
was prepared by Riverkeeper and goes into details in terms of exactly what they found and how many percentage of,
Mhm. Oh, I know,
tests
I know.
in New Paltz have come up nasty. So,
But this was one of the reasons that I thought that public bodies should not be endorsing community events in that river. And yet, the majority of both boards supported that. So, I mean, I'm having a real problem here.
Well, see, I don't, when you said that this implies and we're in the grade, I think that what this says is that this water has tested positive for fecal matter. Has tested positive for fecal matter could mean once. And it's just saying, just so you know, this has tested positive. It does not imply to me that every test has been positive. It implies to me that it has tested positive. So, I think that that is enough times without like some extenuating circumstance causing it, that is enough times to put up a sign there.
Well, let me just suggest to you that Riverkeeper would not claim any such thing. If you have a test that shows fecal matter at 61 parts per million or fewer, or less maybe, I guess if we're talking quantities, then that water is considered safe for swimming and, you know, fishing.
And nothing has been
Oh.
determined not safe for human contact. That was the
I just
other-
want to be cautious enough so that we're not
That's
claiming
fair.
what we
Okay.
don't,
I think
what we can't.
I guess my question is, we're having an update right now.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily a proposal in this moment for us to be discussing in this
this is
session,
what we
right?
discussed at last night's meeting. And
Fine,
this is
then
our current-
Oh, you're
I'll
not
just,
proposing yet.
This is an update on our activities. We will come back to you with formal proposals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to check with Riverkeeper and or the DEC to see what language they would propose? Because it's Riverkeeper's science we're basing this on, maybe we should get Riverkeeper's.
They have
advice
been
in the
very much
morning.
part of the conversation.
They haven't?
Yeah, and the representative from Riverkeeper was last evening at Town Hall, waiting for our meeting to start at Village Hall.
Jeez.
So, yeah, the effort's there. So, we had, I think, had consensus at one point earlier that now that we know there's a problem with the Walco, it's a responsibility to post something there. I hear your comments about this particular language, so we will come back to you with a
Sure.
proposal at the next meeting that reflects
I
this.
support the signage.
Mhm, okay.
Okay, I just want to know legally it is the correct thing to say.
Yep, okay. We'll make sure that we have that blessed. And would you also like us to run whatever language by the village attorney by the next meeting?
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, the word has could imply a year ago, 5 years ago. It's really not.
It's not,
You know.
yeah, it's designed to be general enough to be,
Exactly.
not have
Public
those issues.
information.
Yeah. On the issue of solar streetlights, and Joanna Weiss is going to be doing some follow-up work on this. We have identified 6 providers of solar streetlight equipment. We have sent you their website. Joanna's going to contact some of them and get an idea of what the, well, do you want to speak to this? I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I
Tell
mean,
me,
it's
go ahead.
in writing in front of you, but I will be getting information on what the cost would be for the 300 streetlights, which is what's estimated that we would need, and what the maintenance cost would be for those 300 streetlights, and then also reaching out to see if any of them would be interested in coming to one of our meetings to give a presentation of sorts and to explain what that would be like, if it's something that we can construct, you know, in Hasbrook Park, as Jason suggested, things like that. So that's what I'll be doing for our next meeting.
Will you have training figures included in that?
I can certainly get
Because
training
it seems to
Well, we're
me,
gonna be looking to see what the cost will be for
for
making it happen.
maintenance and.
yeah, well, maintenance
Yes.
is not training, because you have to be trained in order to maintain.
Right.
So,
Important distinction. So we're planning on doing your legwork for you and giving you the information so that you can
Mhm.
make a decision.
great.
Great, thank you.
Tom challenged me when I was appointed that you have to do something, and we're gonna put that back at you. We'll give you the work product, and we'll expect you to take the ball and run with it from there. John Starr has come up with a concept, and why don't you speak about plastic bags?
Well, just to go straight to the point, there are 5 municipalities in New York State that have done plastic bag bans. I would assume that everyone here knows the threat that plastic bags cause to marine ecosystems, the environment in general, human life, animal life, etc. There's 5 municipalities in New York that have done it. They've all used the exact same law with the exact same wording. So I have that law if you'd like to review it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The only caveat between the 5 that have done it, and let me tell you who they are. They are East Hampton, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Rye, and Southampton. The only caveat or difference in the language between those municipalities was who would be in charge of enforcing it were it to happen. And some of those entities had specific agencies or departments that they gave that job to. Other than that, what you see before you has appeared in all 5 of those laws. The sort of beauty of the law is that it is specific in what it's banning. It's banning plastic checkout bags. And under definitions, you'll see checkout bags are defined as a carryout bag that's provided to a customer at the point of sale. The term checkout bag does not include plastic produce bags, garment bags, or plastic bags measuring 28 by 36 inches or larger. So it's a very specific bag. And then they go on to define what they mean by those bags. So if after a period of public comment it was determined that there were other carve-outs needed, they can be easily added to the law. So it's nice in its simplicity, and it's actionable, it's ready to go. And that's sort of my proposal. I did attempt to reach out to local businesses. I did not receive any reply as of date. I will continue to do so. But again, if this were to move forward, I think obviously public comment would be warranted.
So if you have any questions or anything you'd like in addition to that, we think we have given you enough to run with this. We will make a formal proposal at the next meeting. But if anything you want from us to give you or help this to happen,
Katie,
let us know.
But I just have one question. Equity issue mitigation plan.
Well, that was my
under-
question, that was my addition. What about people who can't afford to buy permanent bags? You know, there are paper bags, but I do see a lot of people walking down from the supermarkets, walking down Main Street a long distance, and the plastic bags are more sturdy. There has been some discussion with the recycling center, and I'll let Dan Torres discuss that at some point, because he's had those discussions, about them providing a number of reusable bags to the community. I think there are other ways that it could be done where, anyway, that's an issue we'll need to see what those other 5 communities have experienced with, how they deal with that.
So when you come in with a suggested law or a combination of this, you will also come in with a proposal what to do for people.
Dan actually spoke earlier today, and Johnny and I, as we were walking into the building, I told him what Dan and I were thinking is that maybe we could do this as a village and a town simultaneously, so that this is not just the village pocket of our
Right.
community doing it, and we would all do it at once, and that maybe we'd be able to discuss this at our joint board meeting in July.
And perhaps we could get, I'll use an example, but the community foundation to perhaps donate a certain number of bags that could be given to those people that you and I were
Yeah.
just talking
Yeah.
about.
Oh, and
Something like that.
I was gonna look to Kathy Cartagena for suggestions as well in terms
Yeah.
of what.
Cheryl was
Yeah.
just about to say.
If I could add
Yeah.
something too, the other communities that have done this in New York are either on the Atlantic Ocean or the Long Island Sound. We would be the first inland community, so it would also be significant in that sense.
Did they have a mitigation plan?
I do
They
not know in
probably
detail.
don't need it, given the
Yeah.
communities you named, but
I don't know the answer to that.
you'll know when you come back.
Sure.
Good.
Right, and the Chamber of Commerce, from what Dan said, is also supportive of this. So, and we talked about this last night, maybe we could get some money from them to also support the reusable bag purchase.
Another idea, I mean, we'll talk more about this in our meetings, but, you know how restaurants have like the little menu where they, not menu, like the place settings where they have, advertisements
Right.
from local businesses? I wonder if local businesses would be willing to contribute money to put an advertisement for their business on a reusable bag? And then if we could get enough local businesses to do that, that could pay for bags that we could just hand out, which is advertisement for them, and
Yeah.
gives
That's a good
a
idea.
reusable bag to people who might not be able to
Mhm.
afford to, you know, buy a fancy.
When I studied abroad in New Zealand, all the stores gave out those kinds of reusable bags with their logo on it, and people use them as bags all the time, just
Yeah.
carry them around and just free advertising.
Anybody ever been to a trade show or a convention? That's,
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Actually, when I first moved to New Paltz, I know Sally will remember this, but, and probably Don, but Great American was a supermarket, in the, some of us still call the Ames Plaza, but
Right.
by Stop and Shop.
Where the big auto shop is now.
Yeah, that was actually a supermarket, and they did paper bags that had advertising from local businesses, and many of them were coupons as well. So
Mhm.
you got your,
And
you know,
they were like a
recyclable
a
bag.
shopping bag
Yeah.
Yeah.
with handles.
Okay, we had embraced as a commission the concept of municipal solid waste pickup. We know that there's been there's an RFP process in place, and we're that's all good.
Don, there are two different things, so are you,
He knows, they know.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
good,
I was at their meeting last
okay.
But I think the real value, the real dollar value in municipal solid waste pickup is taking the private out of it and making it municipal. So the RFP process is a good first step. And there are other municipalities, I know Kingston is one, I think Watervliet is another, that have municipal trash pickup. So I think I will reach out some of those communities and get you some information on what they've seen. Because I think going to the RFP is a good first step, but it's really only a first step.
Yep.
So we'll get back to you on that. Joanna?
Home energy audits, when I joined the commission, alternative energy was something that I was very interested in. I have been attending sessions by REPCO and speaking with Dan Torres, who is doing the town side of the 10% energy challenge, which is challenging 10% of New Paltz residents to become aware of the free home energy audits, and then 10% of those residents to actually have a free home energy audit, and then 10% of those residents to take action based on the recommendations from the audit to make their home more energy efficient, environmentally friendly. So one of the things that we're talking about is including some kind of card or printout with some information about the free home energy audits in village residents' monthly bills from the village, just to notify them that this is available to them. Oh, I
They're
apologize. Quarterly bills from the village, just so that they're aware of it, that they're aware it's free, and just information on how to get that. Another thing we've talked about is putting these in church newsletters or just local community organization newsletters, just to get the word out to village residents and really make them aware that this service could really benefit them financially, but also benefit the environment. So that's something that we are talking about. And I will have, by our next meeting for the EPC, I will have some drafts of possible cards for those bills and for newsletters.
Okay. I'd like to speak in the next item in defense of volunteers everywhere. A lot of people have put a lot of their lives and hours into the Millbrook Preserve study and document, and I think it's a good idea to accept it. And we would like to recommend that the village board accept it. No document, especially a document that thick, is ever perfect. It's never finished. As Rachel would put out, since we have so many beavers in that area, the actual ecology within the area changes as the beavers move things. So it will never be finished. But for God's sakes, please honor the work of all the volunteers over all the years and approve that report so we can go on to the next steps.
I'm going to say something. The Millbrook Preserve report has never been presented to this board.
It's
So
going
it
to be
is not
shortly.
this board who has not accepted it. And the other thing, Don, I wanted to point out is that I've read it. I read the edited version. And I would like very much if the authors of the original report were consulted
Yeah.
regarding the edits to that report and agree to, because I think you cannot edit someone else's work without asking them.
Sally, I can cut you off because as the one who did the proofreading, you should also have gotten an email string, maybe you didn't read down that far enough, but that was sent to the committee who did the grant, and they're, at their next meeting, gonna review my proposed changes. And the final draft is gonna come from that committee,
That's fine.
and that's gonna be sent to the town and village boards and to the grant.
But
funder.
all I know is I received a draft that has been edited, and I would prefer to know that the authors of the original report have been consulted and agreed to the edits.
They've been consulted, they haven't agreed yet.
Okay,
We
well,
don't
I
know
want
whether-
their
whether-
agreement.
Of course, no, that's the next step.
So whatever the process
What
is,
if they don't agree? I mean, it's
They-
a new report. So you have their report already, which is the
I don't-
unedited
I
report.
don't have their report
You
already.
don't have their report?
No, that's
Well,
what I'm
if-
saying.
You have their first draft.
I would like, if they do not agree, to have both reports presented to this board, okay? And for those people who worked on the original report to be recognized for their efforts, but I don't want it understood or even thought that that report was presented to this board and we have neglected to accept or honor their work.
I agree.
It hasn't been done.
if that was the impression of my statement, I apologize. I think it's an issue, it's a village issue.
I agree.
If it was interpreted as characterizing as this board's issue, it is an issue for this board because this board has the opportunity to act. And past boards no longer have the opportunity to act. So, it's.
I would be happy to
it's
act if I
excellent.
am presented with, and if, as I say, the original authors don't agree with the edits, they may. But if they don't, I'd like to act on both reports.
That's for your side of the table. And lastly, just a statement. The decision by the village board to run natural gas lines and use natural gas at Village Hall, we believe strongly and unanimously as a commission. It sends a message which is inconsistent with village environmental policies and principles, and it also puts some infrastructure in place that's going to be there for a long time beyond this current board, and we just would like to state our position on that without making any long speeches.
You gonna make any speeches?
Nope.
Okay.
I thank you for that.
And so I think we're done as far as the Environmental Policy Commission. We're going to come back to you with recommendations for the next meeting. We told you what some of those are going to be.
Very happy that you exist and very happy that you've gotten this far
Yep.
in only
It's been
31 days.
yeah.
I would like to move a notice of thanks to be recorded in the minutes for the very proactive effort that you all
Oh,
have
we're just
made.
getting started.
Okay, and that's what I like to hear.
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, guys.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And in the interest of time, I did not make a public comment. I want to just speak about the water meeting that I attended, the the other night with the residents of Plains Road, and I thank you, Tom was there and did a good job. There was some curiosity and concern about whether there's really several options being considered. There's well digging right now to investigate using well water for the new water source. And that's caused some unforeseen issues, and that's the reason there was a meeting a couple nights ago. The other option, which was presented as an option, is the use of Wallkill River water. And the statement many times was that's still on the table. And the Department of Health has required there be a year worth of testing of the Wallkill River water to know what's in the water. That makes sense. But at the end of that year, there won't be very much time left before the action needs to be taken. And what would have to happen for that to be a viable option, and I don't believe it's happening now, would be some preliminary engineering work to find out if you're going to take water from the Wallkill, you got to figure out where you're going to take it. Where are you going to build that aqueduct? And that's the big question. Building it is fine. That's not a big deal. But it probably would take months of consideration and engineering to figure out how you would approach that if you decided to do that. And I don't believe that's being done right now. And if you get to the end of the year of the water testing and that preliminary work hasn't been done, that's not an option for you. So, and I think it's just one of those things that I'm mentioning it now because if it's sincere, if it's a sincere desire to keep that as alive as an option, and it's, my expertise is the water business, and I was here a while back with the director of the drinking water plant for Northern Westchester, who was director of the water plant for the city of Poughkeepsie, and it was his very strong assertion, we can clean the Wallkill River water. That's an option for us. What was agreed in the room the other night was that it's not an engineering issue. The Wallkill River, from an engineering standpoint, we can do that. We know how to clean the water. We know we can do that. It's not a financial issue. The cost of the well digging is $5 to $7 million. The cost of the Wallkill River is $5 to $7 million. So it's not a financial issue. And it was agreed it's a political issue. And I not right now, but I think there's an accounting that would be nice to explain to the community what the politics are that's driving the well water as a strong preference. Because a statement was made that night, well, all things being equal, if we can do the well water, that's the way we're going to go. And it wasn't because of engineering reasons, it wasn't because of financial reasons, because of political reasons. And from my standpoint, I don't want to start a big thing here. So I will. So I just think there should be an accounting to the public on what the politics are and why the well digging would be preference over the Wallkill. The well digging is having some effect on people, and it could devalue some homes. It could have people being switched from well water to public water that don't want to go there. I don't foresee any sorts of issues with taking the Wallkill water that would have, as long as the location's picked, it isn't going to mess with anyone's farm or home. So I just, again, I'm done. I want to report to you that if you do want to consider the Wallkill as a viable option, there's engineering work that needs to start now. And it's not huge, but just figuring where that water would come from in the village of the town of New Paltz, that's doable. But someone has to ask someone to do it. And I don't think it's $100,000 worth of effort, although, I could be proven wrong on that. At least worth asking the question.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
And thank you, Johnny and Joanna.
And if the next joint meetings could have public access on the agenda. Right now, the village has a public access committee, and the town does not. And public access people don't know who their boss is.
Okay,
So
Katie, you
it's
have
an issue
that?
for your issue.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Don, is this, can we keep this?
Yeah, that's.
There are multiple there are multiple
That's
copies.
what they would like to have posted, that, outside Village Hall. So you guys can say yes, You guys can say no.
Okay.
We'll come back to you next meeting with a recommendation.
This
That's-
is what would be the village sign.
That'll be permanent sign in Village Hall, as opposed to the short, few words sign at the
Okay.
entry ports.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Sure.
Do you need one?
It's on their
Kevin, you
website.
wanna join us on the fire truck RFP? So Rebecca and Kevin, you wanna take the lead on this?
What are we doing?
The fire truck.
Fire truck RFP that we added to the agenda.
Go ahead.
They did?
You're
Yeah.
looking at the latest version, correct?
I looked briefly at the latest version today with Katie. Yes, is that done?
Yes, that was emailed to Will and to both of you.
I did not get it this afternoon, but I checked this afternoon either.
The
Okay.
version that I worked on, the version from Will, version from Rebecca, and the version from you, so that everyone is playing with all the same information.
Okay. I did not have a chance to review all three of those.
I
So-
haven't.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Seen it.
three documents that are 102 pages long each, so it's gonna take a little time.
I didn't expect to have this conversation this evening. What happened was, an RFP was produced, Will gave edits, Rebecca worked on it, but it was noticeable that the edits that were made, there were missing pages. I asked Kevin for a copy of the Word version of it. I sat down and went page by page looking for where the differences were. I made edits to a Word version and I submitted it back to the village attorney for him to verify that what I had done is correct. I was only able to finish all that up this afternoon, so I
So
did
we
not
don't
expect this
have,
topic.
we can't
really
discuss
need-
it.
The report is, that's where we're at. We're waiting for the actual final document from Will that he's comfortable with. And the changes that I understand were made were really very minor. They were just wording issues. They weren't,
The changes that I made were manufacturer specific things. So
right, taking out
the
a
difference
name
between
of a manufacturer.
Kellogg's and cornflakes, that type of.
Right.
Those were the changes I made.
And
However,
taking out a name and putting in industry standard.
I would be happy to submit it to the board first thing in the morning. I did not submit it because I was waiting for Will to.
Well, I think Will needs to, he's the one that said that the original document was in need of remediation.
Yes, Sal.
And so, you know, until we have the remediated document, it can't be discussed.
So that's where we're at.
Okay?
So we will have this at the next meeting.
I don't think I could possibly do much more to it. It's like, I spent 2 very long nights and going over it again from the beginning, so
You
it's-
won't be at the next meeting, so will there be somebody representing you?
In regards to the ladder truck, no.
I think we need to have a special meeting then.
Because I'm not comfortable with sending one of my
Okay.
assistants
I
to
mean,
deal
that's
with
why I
a
asked you the
$900,000
question.
purchase.
Yes.
I didn't speak to the board on the matter. I'm so sorry. Again, I didn't expect us to have
You
this
did send out an
conversation.
email, Brian.
I did ask Will that if we, as you know, item number 8 on the agenda was that you wanted to have a meeting with Lou regarding matters related to personnel. I asked Will if it would be possible to write the meeting minutes to also include a conversation on this in the hopes that within, as you know, I asked you, I
So
told
why don't
everyone
we
for
combine
availability
it
of the meeting.
What was the date on that?
I polled the board for availability.
There's no
of the
date
meeting.
yet.
So I was going to tie them together, hopefully within the next week was my hope to have a meeting.
If we're gonna do that and the RFP or the specs will be there, then I'll be there.
Oh, I don't think we
Yeah.
can have a meeting unless they
Well,
are
yeah,
there.
I mean,
because
I'm
we
kind of
left
under
the
a
point.
timetable where I'm flying out of here soon.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I did speak with Katie today. We've been, since last week, we've all been going back and forth on it. But I did request, should we have that, combine it with a special meeting with the DPW, that the public notice that goes out gives enough information as to what we are discussing, just so that there aren't any questions that arise, being that it's a special meeting.
Okay, but I would like the meeting done at the time that Will has, and I also would like the village attorney present at that meeting, so that if any questions come up on technicalities, we can get it resolved. And maybe at the same time, we can have the DPW discussion. But my understanding, Jason, is that it has to be in the afternoon?
It doesn't have to be in the afternoon.
Okay, then we can do it. Why don't we try for next Wednesday night?
Lou is never available on Wednesday, that's the one issue, he's never available on Wednesday.
He's
That's
not
when we
ever
set up our
available.
fire meeting.
Hmm?
We have our fire meeting.
Okay. Well, we could have it after your fire meeting.
Katie will figure it out.
I work at home.
Katie will figure it out.
All right.
And I will happily send the copy of the public meeting notice to everyone so that they know that it's properly.
But Katie, please, don't ask us for a meeting if we don't have the document and Will Frank's agreement to be with us.
Yeah.
I promise I will not.
Thank you.
All right. So, sorry to make you wait, Kevin.
That's okay.
Thank you
It's
for
all right.
coming.
I appreciate the work that Katie and Rebecca and everybody's doing on this, so
Okay.
We'll get it done.
we're moving forward, so.
Yeah.
But you need to be at the meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Kevin.
Kevin.
Thanks, Chief. All right. Moving right along. I move we adopt the consent agenda, absent item 4.
I'd like to add the bills and claims, budget modifications that we got at the table
Is there any objection?
are in addition to the ones that came in the packet.
Is there any objection? to-
No.
Okay, then, as amended, I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's just go down the list now. 6th, housing law. This is back on the agenda. We have the environmental assessment form from Will from last time. This really was, I put this on the agenda again for 2 reasons, because we're within striking distance of setting a public hearing here. Two new elements. One is something that we've been hearing something about with outlining tenant responsibilities. As it says in the footnote, number 129-12 compliance is just cut and pasted verbatim from the existing village code. A section I was planning on deleting because there's nothing else relevant in that chapter after this. So, but I kind of rescued it from the rest of the law. Because this would give guidance to the building inspectors and allow them to ticket tenants, which is something that came up at our building department meeting. The only other change is,
Can I make, I think A and B of the yellow under compliance should be removed and only C should show.
well, let me get to the other change and then we can go back. The only other change was the fees and fines, or the fines, I should say. What we agreed upon, the 3 trustees were there, and the building department, except for Holly that was there, was that what would make most sense would be to have the fine be $0 to $1,000 at the discretion of the building inspector. And that way we get out of the,
But where is it here? We don't have a statement here.
it's not here because remember we're doing that fee and fine schedule.
Right, but I still think you need to reference it.
It's referenced when it says, in 129.13,
Penalties for offenses.
C, for every violation, the owner shall be subject to the fine set annually by resolution of the Board of Trustees. So we would just have to set the fine
And
by
at
resolution.
the discretion of the building inspector.
Right, well, that's it, right.
That's what you need to add. Does everybody agree with that?
Is
Where
number
are
C
you
or-
adding?
No, the addition of, at
No, no,
At C,
At C.
we're adding and at the discretion of the building inspector.
That's fine.
Just at the end of that sentence?
Yeah, it's at the end of the sentence.
Okay. 129.13C.
Katie, could we start getting into the habit of noting what draft we are dealing with? We have too many drafts floating around.
It's
And-
actually dated on the agenda.
Hmm?
It's the agenda, that on the agenda, it makes note that it's the June, I believe it's the June 16th version.
No, dated June 12th.
Yes, so that's the.
But, my dear, it's not dated June 12th,
As in the document.
okay? I mean, that's what we need to do.
I would be happy to.
And
provide-
also, the local law that we had the hearing on tonight has no number. And we agreed that when it comes to a hearing, it's assigned a number. Okay?
Does anyone else think that we should delete A and B from compliance, meaning that the only responsibilities outlined are the ones are tenants and not landlords?
Yes, because you've already throughout the entire document talking about the responsibility of the owners. I mean, that's what this whole law is about. So, I don't see that you need A.
Well, A I think we should keep. B, I'm not sure what the difference is between owners and rooming house operators.
Well, that we've already covered in the definition, so that needs to go out, because we're not differentiating, we're talking about short
Right.
term. So rooming houses, it's anything that's rented for trade or barter, or money.
But so A and C should stay then. We'll get rid of B
I'm,
because A is broad. A and C are
Definite
broad.
owners of responsibility. I don't see it's necessary. If you wanted to have it as your legislative intent, begin the law, where, why you're doing this, that would be fine. But I don't see as an article within the law why you would have this. It's too general, it's too broad. Basically, it's the reason for why you're doing this. Are you following me, Ariane?
Yeah.
Are you too sleepy?
I am sleeping, but no, I thought.
I don't see that this adds any meaning.
Do we need section 129.12 at all?
Well, see,
Do we
what
need to
I
list?
would
Do we need
do,
to list it? Do we need to list this stuff at all?
Well, isn't the point of having the checklist?
no, that's not what this, that's
no,
not,
I know, but I'm saying, like, we don't need to list things here,
Yes.
because the point of having the checklist would.
It has
supersede
it listed
this.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's
So
already
it's just this whole section is redundant.
yeah,
I mean, yes.
that's what I think.
So we should just get rid of 129.12 altogether.
I would get, what I would do, if you really feel you'd like it in, Jason, is,
I don't really care one way or the other. I think it complicates the law and muddies the waters.
Well, this
I
says
do too, but
that,
C should be in.
See-
it says that it's been added again after the meeting with the building department, so what happened at that meeting that made this go back in?
Oh, I just added it while we were sitting there.
Oh,
Yeah.
After
there
the-
was nothing
No.
being discussed.
Well,
There was a
no,
reason.
that's not true.
Well, no. What was being
because
discussed was
one-
how do they, if they go into the apartment and see that there were no holes in the walls when they rented it, and now there's holes in the walls. It's obviously the tenants doing it. Should the building inspector be able to find the tenants, or should they just be finding the property owner?
And one of the building inspectors was very, very firm on the fact that tenants have responsibilities too,
Right.
and that was why Jason put this back in. He was very firm. So, I agree with responsibility of occupants. I agree with the comment that was made earlier this evening. If we're gonna have it in, then we need to have a consequence.
Right.
They need to be able to be ticketed too.
Which they can be just by having this in here.
No,
Yes, they can.
doesn't say so.
It doesn't have to say so outright because once we define certain responsibilities belonging to certain people, when those responsibilities are violated, those people get the ticket.
Then why don't you just say that, add that, and I think that'll
Yeah.
solve a lot of problems.
I think just, we shouldn't leave any ambiguity.
Yeah.
If that's the intent, we should put it in there.
I think too.
So let's say,
Because I hear what you're saying, but
Let-
I don't want to leave it open-ended.
I just want to see if I understand what we're getting at here. The whole of this bill concerns the requirements of owners,
Right.
period. I mean, that's what it requires.
That's what it's supposed to
That's
be.
what it's supposed to be about. We get down to 129.12, and then we reiterate all of the compliance requirements for owners and operators or
We
as
aren't
well.
reiterating, we're making a general statement that should be legislative intent. That, if you wanna have A1 and A12, then I would make that your legislative intent for why you have this law being introduced. To get through this whole law and then see this general statement, okay, it is confusing because you've already throughout the entire law talked
Right.
about various responsibilities.
That's my point.
So I would move that, I'd either strike it all together, or I would, if it makes people more comfortable, I
Let's
would
strike it all
make
together, unless someone really feels strongly this belongs in the law.
I don't think it does, Jason.
It was a idea that came up in a meeting. Let's tank it if it's not worthwhile.
Well,
I think
I
it
was
confuses
trying to, I was trying to summarize, so my understanding.
I'd rather not have it in the law.
You'd
Because-
rather not have the responsibilities of occupants in the law.
No,
Oh,
because I think that that's covered by leases.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I think, and that's what came up at the meeting, is that we needed a statement on responsibility of tenants.
Yeah.
And that, you just took the whole section, Jason, and threw it in. But I
Yeah.
would get rid of A and B, keep C, and give some statement about penalties, or that you
So-
can be ticketed for these violations, or whatever you
So
want to
alright,
call
so
it.
let's deal with the second first. Sorry, Rebecca, go ahead.
Okay.
Which one? You mean the C?
Wait, sorry, Rebecca had the floor.
Okay, so for 129-13C, it would be for every violation of this chapter, the owner or occupants shall be
Yeah.
subject.
We're not on 2913.
No, but
I know, but
she-
that's to
what
cover-
solves, that will
Say that-
solve what
read
we're
that again.
saying in terms of who gets the violation.
129-13C, for every violation of this chapter, the owner or occupants.
And or
Or,
occupants.
and/or
Yes.
tenant, I would call it. I wouldn't say occupant.
Well, but then we can't have responsibilities of occupants, it's gotta say responsibilities of tenants.
Hmm?
We just have to have consistent
C,
language.
the language in C would need to be consistent with the language in 129-13C.
We do not define occupant, we
Yeah.
define tenant.
No, but this
And
whole
displaced
section
tenant.
is called
Hmm?
responsibility of occupants.
No, you're back up, she wants to put it down
No,
here.
I know that.
No.
Yeah,
I know
You're
that.
you're lost.
We're talking
You
about
have
two
to
different
have to go,
things.
Rebecca is saying that this has to be consistent with this.
then, and I'm saying, change it to responsibility of tenants.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Change occupant to the word tenants.
And do all of you agree that we should delete A and B?
Yes.
Yes,
Fine with that.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I guess, what is it in our code? Is it tenant or occupant?
so are we agreed to change occupants to tenants?
It'd be tenant in the code.
Or leaseholder?
Well, if displaced tenant we define.
Well, cause we defined, we
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
define just tenant in this law, so I'm gonna see what do we have in the actual code.
The only reference we have is displaced tenants,
Right.
Ariana. Do you wanna have a definition for tenant? Maybe
Well,
we should.
Right, I'm saying if we already have,
We define rental property, we could define tenant as one who lives in a rental property.
We need to add a definition for tenant, and then. we can
Ariana's
do-
seeing if we don't have one already.
Hmm?
Ariana is looking to see if we have one already in the code.
occupant shall refer to any person who has lawfully entered upon and is in the possession of real property as a tenant, manager, person having charge of any building or any use thereof, or who has an interest in the building which he possesses.
So we use
I
the
think
word
what I'm
occupant.
saying is the word to use.
Okay.
We use under registration requirements, the number of intended tenants, subtenants. We do not say occupants.
Well, In our code, tenant falls underneath occupant. It's tenant is one of the, descriptions that, occupant is the overlying word for it.
Right.
An
You've got it
occupant
covered.
could be
Yeah,
the
it's-
property owner.
It could be.
It's fine,
Yes.
yeah, that's
So
fine.
that's why I would rather stay with the word tenant. And
Word-
define tenant
We
in
don't,
the
we don't need to,
definition.
Sally, it's
We already
redundant.
have.
We have a definition of tenant in the code.
You-
Tenant is listed under the definition of occupant.
We've no definition for that.
We have a definition of occupant.
We
in the
also
village
have a
code.
definition for tenant.
We do?
A person occupying real property
Right.
under oral or written lease
Yes.
is in possession. Yeah, I think we should then use tenant.
Okay,
Yep, so change it to tenant.
all right.
It's funny, occupant is within a law, but it's not under this definition.
So with those changes, I think we're about done with this, actually.
And are we agreed that, there will be penalties in here?
Not in here, remember, they're
But I
not
mean,
in this
that they
law.
can be issued a ticket.
Yes.
Yes,
All right, and that's.
and that
what
was changed under
That-
129.13.
So one of the things that is still a sticking point that we've talked about and we can decide what we want to do is 129.13A.
That was requested to stay, especially because we're getting a range of $0 to $1,000 now. Having
That's-
each day a
that was how
continuing
we solved it.
violation means that it could be a $5 violation every day, or it could be a $200 violation every day at the discretion of the building inspector. So
Rich
they wanted that flexibility of having because that way people don't drag their feet, and it's up to their discretion, and the judge's discretion ultimately.
How about we add, Jason, at the discretion of the building inspector?
To A,
Yep,
that's fine.
and that's all.
I don't know if that makes me feel better about
You should. I think.
it. If we have the building inspectors we have now, if we have
Yeah,
the
oh.
building inspectors we had a year ago, no.
I see what you're saying. But I don't know how to address that.
Just we have to make sure we hire good building inspectors. That's all we can do. At a certain point, if you're gonna delegate things to the staff, you need to trust that they're gonna do it. And if not, you get rid of them.
Yes, but I do think we have to. No, I'm not.
You can't write laws.
No,
you
I
can't
wasn't
write
gonna say
laws
that.
I agree.
just in case we have a bad building inspector.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Are there any other changes
Yes.
or things?
I think what I would do in that case is add a section E allowing for an appeal to the Board of Trustees.
I'm not comfortable with that without checking with Will.
No, I would check with Will on that, but I think
We're not moving.
Why do
this
we-
tonight anyway.
Why do we want to?
for the very reason that Ariana raised. That was all.
But that's the thing, is that the appeal isn't to the village board, the appeal is to the town justice. That's how this whole process works.
No, because I can't, if you're the building inspector
Yeah.
and you ticket me and I believe the building inspector is bad, corrupt, or has been ordered to do this to me, I have to have the right of appeal.
You
Who
do.
am I appealing to?
Judge Katz.
I
Because,
don't think so.
of course, that's how the judicial system works. What happens in this with code enforcement is, say I'm the building inspector, I found you $500 because your flowers are over the sidewalk, and that's obviously ridiculous, and you don't want to pay it, and so you go before Judge Katz, explain the situation. The judge is actually the one that sets the fine. The building inspector just recommends the fine. So I could give you a $500 appearance ticket, but it's the judge that's going to decide whether you pay $500 or $5. Because remember, Mark was talking about that. He had the judge who would just knock down all his fees down to $10, $10, $10.
Okay,
So it's,
Now,
it's
what
the
happens-
judge that really has the ultimate say
all
over
right.
how much the
But
fines
what
are.
happens, Jason, if this is a continuing saga? And so you fine me $500 for this thing.
Right.
You come back and you find me $500 for something else. You're not finding anybody else for this kind of behavior. The judge isn't gonna know that. That there has to, I believe there has to be built in here.
But neither would the village board.
Hmm?
The judge would have just as much ability to find out as the village board would.
I disagree, because his job is to implement and to enforce the law. But that does not mean that he would be able to appeal it. So I think I'd like to ask Will how we would provide the question of the ability, if it could be shown by just 10 examples that the same person is being discriminated against by the building inspector, there has to be a right of appeal. How do we do that?
And right, and I'll find out. But
Okay.
I'm just saying I'm sure that that's what judges are for.
Well,
that's what the court system is
I
for.
think Ariana's raising a different question, and I think we need to address it. So, I mean, if we can't,
Yes,
if
can.
Will agrees with you, then we have to go as we are.
Right, we'll find out.
Now, Mike, I have a,
129-12 A and B is the portion that you've thrown out.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
wanna make sure that I have the correct numbers. Thank you.
All right, so I'll bring this to Will and see what he says about our changes.
mhm.
All right, so
But I have an overall question.
okay.
Okay. We don't seem to be very consistent throughout this whole thing in terms of, okay, I have to go and I have to register annually. That
Right.
means I can rent even though I'm not inspected.
No,
Yes, it does.
you can't. You must register all rental properties,
I
and
did.
in order to register, you have to pass the inspection.
That doesn't say it.
100%. It does say it.
Doesn't,
Well,
doesn't say that. You look at 129.7, and you see that any rental property shall be registered annually in accordance herewith. It has nothing to do,
Okay.
because later on you say that if I'm inspected, then I get the rental permit is the inspection, okay? Because look at temporary house. If a rental property certificate of occupancy and or its rental permit has either expired, been denied, suspended, or revoked for any reason unrelated to the acts, okay? But it doesn't say that I can't rent my property until it's inspected. It doesn't say it. And if that's what we mean, we better fix it.
all right. Well, I'll add that in because it is the intent.
Okay, so
It
that,
should be in. I'll add it into 129-8A.
and will you ask Will about the privacy? I didn't understand the privacy issue that was being raised, because
I didn't
we're
either.
not asking, we're just saying you have to keep, if you're renting, you have to know who your tenants are.
And well, and part of that is because, and we talked about this before, if there's a fire, there
Right.
is an account of who is living in
Right, but the building inspector doesn't get that list of
Yeah,
tenants.
no.
So the question is, what was the objection to my knowing who owns 47 Church Street and is renting it? I'm not,
I don't know what Bob's objection was because it had nothing to do with the law.
It
was
had
written.
come up during one of the discussions, the thought to have, a list reported to the building department of who the tenants actually were.
but
That was not
And
ever.
that's not in
yeah.
the law.
I know,
Okay.
that's what
Scrapped
the
it.
objection
That's-
was.
okay.
It was someone's recollection of something that was discussed, but did not get
So
acted
we
on.
agree, it
Yes.
isn't
Yeah,
an issue,
correct.
okay. But I do think I can rent, the way it is right now, I can rent to Tom before I'm inspected.
I'll double check. Will.
And I think we have to be a little tighter, because under our temporary housing, if a rental property, okay, this is E, 129.8E, okay, we're talking about has either expired, been denied, da-da-da. My concern is Tom is renting and he never registered. And that's not included here. Tom should not be allowed without serious consequence. If he knows he's supposed to register and he doesn't and he rents, okay? What's supposed to happen to him if he gets caught? Okay, because that's one of the big problems, is we are having things that are rented that aren't registered. So I think we need to get that straightened out. Right. And I think we need to, because we're being a little confusing here. I think when you register your property, it's at that time that you receive the checklist. When you register the property.
That's what's supposed to happen, yeah.
But that's not what it says here.
I think it is, I think you're misreading a lot of this.
I'm not misreading, I'm reading English.
And I wrote the
And if
English.
the words aren't there,
And I wrote
Jason,
the English, and I know what I wrote.
You have it under inspection procedure 129.9. Property owner shall be provided a copy of the blank annual inspection report when?
What number are you reading? There's
I'm in
It's
129.9.
B.
B.
Yes, and I'm saying that you get the list, the checklist, at the time you register, so when the building inspector comes, you already knew what was gonna be checked up on.
This is not, there's something missing from what I wrote. There's something missing.
Okay, let's find it. And I think the building inspector and the owner both should be required to sign the inspection. So when I get inspected, I know I've been inspected, and I agree to the violations, and I have to sign it. And we had that in the original draft, and it's not here now. Okay, that's it for me.
All right, so we've got to really pick up the pace here, and I'm going to actually call another recess in a little while because we're going to be here for a while.
No, I can't really afford that. I have to get the pharmacist.
Pardon?
Sorry, we've got 7 or 8, 9
I don't
more
need a
agenda
recess.
items.
I need to proceed with the meeting.
So what do you wanna do?
But also, the reason that we have recess is because you can't make good decisions sitting here for 3 hours straight. So why don't we go through, I know you disagree, but you've always disagreed for 3 years and it hasn't changed my mind. Maybe there's a couple we can knock off quickly. I'll move that we approve the hiring of the second summer help position that was budgeted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll move we adopt local law 86 that we have passed, had the public hearing on tonight.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
What is this one?
I would like,
There was a law, hold on, I think I've only got one more that's a no-brainer. There was a local law, a public hearing that was set at the meeting with the building department. There was a one-sentence local law that Bren found it, that plugged the hole, that said you could build single-family homes without going to the planning board. So she found it, and we need to declare ourselves lead agency and refer it to the county planning board.
So
And
moved.
Will says we can do that tonight.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so you're gonna hold the public hearing on the ninth.
And set the public hearing on the 9th,
And that's included in the motion.
That's,
I'd like to move that we purchase and install no truck signs and place them in the appropriate streets that by code are forbidden to have tractor trailers on them except for delivery purposes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, I think the other ones take discussion. So we'll just go down the list.
Just, we
I
need
don't
to,
think we'll waste time though. I don't think it's gonna be a discussion,
Okay.
it's more of a.
we have the truck parking request that was added.
Yeah, I know, I've got a couple more things added, but I just think that they take discussion. I was going through the ones that were more.
So which one, what do you wanna do
I
now?
wanna go back to the beginning and just go through the rest of the list.
Oh, okay.
So now that we have a smaller agenda.
Okay.
Alright, so Ariana, the waste hauling RFP.
I wanted to hold off on passing it simply because since I've been reaching out to business owners, there are some unique, a lot of people have unique situations, so I have gotten in touch with Will, but I have not heard back yet regarding how to handle some of these situations. Some businesses don't have room for dumpster, for instance, so they have toters and they have a special setup, so I just wanna make sure that we can include these things. We don't necessarily need to do it in the RFP, maybe it's just done by contract, but I wanted to find out from Will how we should proceed, so that's why I did not want to have it on our consent agenda, because this is a new development since I've been reaching out to business owners.
Do we need to amend our motion from the last meeting? We extended it to August 30th, the permit fee.
Right.
Do you want it extended to September 30th now?
I think we shouldn't bother with that just yet. If we need to, we can do that in the first meeting of July. But otherwise, we can put it out at the first meeting.
Well, I mean, you have to calculate out. Are we gonna be ready to do the RFP first meeting in July?
As far as I'm concerned, the RFP is ready to go. If there's no changes to it based on this new development.
May we do the RFP at the special meeting that we're going to have about the fire truck?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see why not.
All right.
Especially
Katie,
if nobody else has any other edits or changes.
I don't have
Will and I
any.
went through everything and.
you got the changes that we all talked
Yeah.
about.
And Will and I went through all of it, so there's no issues in terms of the language, as long as we don't need to do anything different based on.
But you just want to double check to make
I
sure.
just want to know from Will.
So why don't we just do it at the special meeting?
It's either that or why don't we just do it now with a contingency if there are no
We could do it
further
that way.
objections from the attorney?
Okay, I'm game for that.
What do you think?
That's fine.
Ariana?
I would move that the RFP be issued, contingent on no further objections to it from our attorney.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright.
Well, thanks, everybody.
which
Number
one so
7.
far are you waiting on?
I'd like the
They just want
environment,
us
could
to-
we ask the environmental, policy commission to review this?
They don't have the expertise.
Hmm?
They don't have the expertise yet.
Well-
They don't know seeker, they don't know land use, they don't
But,
know.
but we have George Rosenhaus saying not to do it. We have the Ulster County Planning Board saying not to do
They're
it.
not saying not to do it, they say there's better ways to do it, which
Right, there are
Brenda
better
and
ways
I,
to do it.
which Brenda and I and Will disagree with.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry.
can support this action as long as the Hudsonia map is updated. I will not support a law.
Don't you
that-
remember?
I asked for this before and I've asked for it
But
several
Sally,
times.
it was said to you clearly that these kind of maps, this is an updated map. This is a very recent wetlands map.
2007.
Is recent. They're usually not updated more than 10, 20 years. So this is actually as good as you're gonna get. That's what Kurt said when he was here at the meeting about it.
That's not what he said.
It is what he said. It is exactly what he said.
Do what you want.
Well, I don't think anyone has the energy to talk about this because it's complicated and meaningful, so, I would like to just table this till our next meeting. We're not
Okay.
gonna, write more about why this law is a good idea.
Okay.
It's only been in the hopper for 2.5 years now. That's supposed to
I
be
mean,
right.
I have no issue with it.
Yeah, but Sally does. I don't feel like arguing with Sally for the next half hour about it.
I want the map updated or else removed.
You can't remove it. This is why I don't want to argue about it. You don't understand enough about how the law works yet, so I need time to explain it, and that can't happen when it's 11 o'clock at night.
So is there a motion to table? Do we need to vote
We
on
don't need
it?
a motion. I just
Okay,
tabled it till our
fine.
next
Doing
meeting.
it, he's
Um,
taking it off.
This one is simpler. The local law prohibiting formula retail uses. This is the version that Will revised. So this is Will's latest version of this. I would like to refer this to the county and village planning boards for their opinion.
Yeah.
Is there any? Well, I'll move that we do that.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, before, we talked about what you do about drugstores, cell phone companies like Verizon, Curves, they're all chains, we have them. Okay, doctors
Yep.
all belong to health programs that are now considered chains.
Well, it may not be considered a change under this definition of a chain. But
Five or more.
But 5 or more plus you need other things too.
Right,
The
let's refer it.
the other thing is that remember we have the ZBA that gives use variances. So
Remember, we had that discussion.
we had
Why
that
impose
discussion
on the
as well.
ZBA something that is unnecessary?
because that's what they're
You can-
appointed to do.
They don't need to go do stuff because you wanna have a chain store ban. Let's get the, if you
No, but
want a ban,
but Sally, if it is the best interest of the community to not have franchise businesses within the village boundaries, then it is exactly the role of the ZBA, as it is with any of our zoning code, to make the quasi-judicial determinations of things like variances. And it would be exactly their job to grant a variance for this law as it would be for them to grant a use variance for a suburban subdivision or whatever other use there is. It would be a section of the zoning law, and like all of the zoning law, the ZBA is a judicial body that arbitrates it.
but please
It's not
don't,
it's not a vanity project that I'm imposing on the ZBA. It's a piece of legislation.
that is your legislation,
Yes, and
Yes.
if it's passed, it would be the village's legislation.
if
And-
it passes.
Yes, Sally, of
Yes,
course if it
so
passes.
refer it to the planning board if you wish.
Is there any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That is done, that is done, that is done. The Church Street, Church of the Nazarene is missing a page in there,
Yes.
Uh,
I
that-
noticed
that has the insurance. What do you wanna do with this application?
Did they not submit it, or did we not? Oh, okay.
I would also like an explanation of what they mean by outreach.
Yeah, I was wondering what the event would actually entail as well.
Maybe we should ask someone to be at our next meeting.
What is the date of the event?
If they couldn't be at the meeting, if they could give us a detailed answer, is it something that you'd consider letting us have on the meeting, the special meeting that we're having, since it's, our next meeting is the 9th, and it only gives some 2 days for that.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Okay.
So what are we doing with it?
They're coming to our next meeting, tabled.
We'll have more information from them.
All right, the last
Well, I
thing
want
I
a
have.
completed application.
That's what we,
Might I make a suggestion, Katie? On the back of our applications, there is a section that says office use. Those things are to be checked yes or no at the time it comes to us. And they weren't.
All right, last thing before executive session that I have is the Chalk Festival parking.
Nancy Thompson.
I don't quite understand what they are asking.
I'm not sure either.
They're clearly asking to use our parking lots. One of the questions is would we allow it to be exclusively for the chalk festival?
You mean that nobody else coming to town could park there?
Yeah, which I'm not in favor of that.
No, I'm not either.
I'm fine with people parking, I mean, it's public parking.
That's right.
I'm fine with people parking there, I'm fine with signage saying, you know, this is a place for parking, for people who are coming for these.
But I'm not going to say, Ariana, you can't park there.
Right, I'm not comfortable with
Yeah.
with exclusive usage, no.
So you recommend we just say no?
Yes,
No, we say yes, you can use the lots,
but we're not,
But
we're not
Right.
making them exclusive for you.
yeah.
The event is publicized so well, I don't have any objection to them listing our lot as an alternative, or any of our
Yeah.
lots. Because there's also the lot, they can park down on Huguenot Street by the sewage treatment plant.
Yeah.
Also,
There's
Rebecca,
so many
last
places
year,
for them to direct people.
these two lots were totally empty, and they had signs up saying that parking was available, okay? And nobody was parking there.
Right.
So, I think they should be entitled to use whatever parking. They can park at the middle school and provide a bus to drive them down.
Well, the event was well attended last year, and I did not hear any problems with parking.
But I didn't either, I agree.
It would probably be easiest for them to also direct people over to Huguenot Street.
So we do nothing, and Katie will communicate that to the organizers? All right. I move to go into executive session I'm sorry, why am I going into executive session? Personnel, what?
To discuss the employment history of particular
Thank you.
employees.
You think I'd know all these by now. Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And you can pack it in. Thank you.
Is that yours or is that Katie's?
That's not mine, I have one.
Okay, Katie needs one.
I do have copies.